Chapter 45 The mission to rescue Office Naruto, Rias, Revel, Roswise, and Kaneko stood inside of their bedroom as Kuroka raced about the room, lighting scented candles and incense, and adding lenses to the lights so everything was seen through a red haze. He had no idea where she'd gotten any of those. It looked like she had set it all up in advance. The incense had an unusual scent. It was pleasant, like fresh strawberries, but there was something about it that addled the mind. "What is all this?" asked Rias with a frown. Kuroka paused in what she was doing to look at the redhead. Her express was smug, as if she was exuding her superiority in all matters sex of Rias. In response to that look, Naruto's redhead girlfriend's expression took on a fierce glare. Not that Kuroka seemed to mind, she even giggled. "I'm setting up the decorations in order to set the mood, obviously. Just having sex is fine and all, but if you want to infuse more passion and love into your sex, then you need to set the mood. You kids are amateurs who have only been fucking. You haven't experienced true lovemaking like this." "Neither have you," Kaneko deadpanned. "Nya ha ha ha." Kuroka just laughed her sister's words off, not bothered in the least, though now Naruto wondered if Kuroka might be a virgin. Could such a thing even be possible? Anyway, now that everything is set up, I recommend you kids get to it. The longer you wait, the less time you have until the mission begins. Her words rang true. They really didn't have much time. If they wanted to take even a smidge of the chakra Yami had stolen from Naruto back, then they had to get started now. Naruto would never admit this out loud, but he was actually shivering in anticipation. The idea of having an orgy with these women was already enough to make him harder than a diamond. "We'll get to it." Kaneko glared at her sister. "But you need to leave." "Ah, but Sharon, I'd like to see this. I need to make sure nothing goes wrong." "Leave." Nya ha ha. Kuroka rushed out of the room. The last thing Naruto saw of the woman was her brilliant golden eyes gazing at them with amusement before the door closed. "That woman," Kaneko huffed as she placed her hands on her hips. "She did seem awfully excited, didn't she?" asked Revel. "You nervous, fried chicken? How could I not be?" Revel, for once, did not deny her own nervousness or get angry at Kaneko's nickname for her. "This is the first time I've ever done something like this, and so much hinges on us doing it successfully that I can't help but feel worried, if we fail." Revel trailed off, but it wasn't like anyone needed her to continue. If they failed to counteract the hatred swimming inside of Yami, then Naruto would not be able to regain any power. That was something they had to avoid. "You can't think like that." Rias began unbuttoning her school uniform, revealing the lacy black bra underneath along with the swell of her twin bulges. Her massive rack was practically straining against her bra. "This isn't about whether we fail or succeed. You only need to think about sharing your love and happiness with the people you love. That's all that matters." "That's a very good way of looking at it," said a nervous Roswise. She was shaking like a leaf, and her eyes had grown really wide as she watched Rias strip down. After removing her shirt, the redhead unbuttoned her blouse, letting it slide down her legs. Then she kicked it off, leaving herself in nothing but a bra and panties, and looked at Roswise. The panties were lacy like her bra. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked Rias. "I know it's important to have as many people as possible in here while this happens. The more people the better. But I also know you were planning to take your relationship with Naruto slowly." In response to Rias's words, Roswise looked over at Naruto, who could only offer a kind smile in return. He did want her to be with him right now, but he also wouldn't force her into anything. In the end, what he wanted was her happiness. "I'll understand if you don't want to. I'm sure you want to wait and have our first time be more special," Naruto said. Roswise bit her lip. During that time, Rias had finally removed her bra, causing her breasts to bounce before coming to rest prominently on her chest. Naruto's mouth watered at her dark red nipples. He wanted to take this into his mouth and swirl his tongue around them right now, but he held back because he was still waiting for Roswise's answer. Revel and Kaneko were also helping each other strip. Kaneko was already wearing nothing but her socks and Revel was down to her bra and panties. However, from the fire lighting up the Phoenix Heiress's head, it was clear she was embarrassed about removing those last articles of clothing. It is true that I want to wait before committing, and that I'd like our first time to be just the two of us." Roswise's eyes hardened even as blood welled up around her cheeks. "However, no matter whether my first time happens now or later, it will always be special, because I'll have it with you." Roswise, Naruto tried to think of something cool to say, but he was too choked up. These were the kinds of words any person would have loved to hear. That he was hearing it while 3 other women were getting naked made things a little okay. Very odd, but it still made tears gather in his eyes. The emotions behind them were genuine, and that was enough. "I'm willing to do this," Rossweiss added for emphasis. "If you're willing to do this, then you should start by taking off these clothes," Rias suddenly proclaimed. "What?" Rias had moved behind Rossweiss while she was talking. With a quickness that shocked even Naruto, the redhead managed to remove Rossweiss's jacket and unbuttoned her shirt before either of them knew what was happening. Naruto could do nothing but stare, his throat dry, as Rossweiss's plain white bra was revealed. It wasn't what he would have called sexy underwear. However, he felt this plain style suited Rossweiss best. It was like her bra reflected her pure and straight-laced personality. "Don't just stand there like an idiot, Naruto." Rias scowled at him as she unhooked Rossweiss's bra. The Valkyrie's breasts bounced, jiggled, then went still. "Take off those clothes. Take them off. Take them off," Kaneko chanted in a deadpan voice. He hoped she realized that blank expression really didn't inspire sexual desire in him. Naruto reached up and unzipped his jumpsuit. He slid it off his shoulders and threw it to the floor. During this time, an embarrassed Rossweiss allowed Rias to remove her bra. Naruto sucked in a deep breath when he saw her tits spring free from their confines. The Valkyrie had lovely skin, and the light pink nipples capping them were hard to resist. He felt like he could have admired them for all eternity. A pitch tent formed in his pants, though soon his pants were gone, leaving him in just his boxers, which made the bulge even more obvious. Rossweiss was so embarrassed she covered her face with her hands. However, she had left a slit between her fingers that allowed her to continue gazing at his raging erection. "Well, looks like we're all naked," Rias said brightly as she placed her hands on Rossweiss's shoulder. "Now, kiss him." "Wha?" Rossweiss was not given any time to do more than squawk as Rias pushed her into Naruto. She face planted against his chest, but then she tried to scramble back. This instinctive reaction was stopped by Naruto, who grabbed her hand and pulled her back. He wrapped his arms around her waist. Now pressed together, skin to skin. Rossweiss could undoubtedly feel the hardness of his erection. It was wedged firmly between her thighs, after all. Naruto, it's not too late to back out," Naruto said. "I think this might be your last chance." Naruto's ability to resist was hanging by a thread. It was already difficult for him to keep his thoughts firm. He didn't think he had the strength to resist 4 alluring and naked women for much longer. "I'm not backing out," Rossweiss said at last. Her expression was firm, though her cheeks were a vibrant red. Something inside Naruto snapped. "I love you, Rossweiss. I love you mph." Naruto hampered Rossweiss's mouth with his own, pushing his tongue into her mouth without restraint. The Valkyrie tried to keep up. However, this was her first kiss, never mind her first adult kiss. Her tongue was unable to do more than turn to putty under Naruto's ministrations. The act of his kiss not only left her breathless and unable to keep up, but her legs wobbled and grew weak. She would have fallen if Naruto wasn't holding her to his chest. As the kiss continued, Rias came up behind Rossweiss, pressing her breasts into the other woman's back as she lowered her head and began nibbling on the Valkyrie's ear. Rossweiss's eyes went wide as her entire body shuddered under the two-way assault. Her moans were loud but muffled by Naruto's mouth and tongue. He couldn't get enough of this taste. Rossweiss's mouth and tongue had an oddly refreshing taste, as if she'd been chewing mint gum before they kissed. When the woman had turned to putty in their hands, Naruto scooped Rossweiss into his arms, then set her on the bed. Rossweiss had only just come to when he began sliding her panties off her legs. Her cheeks turned crimson as she closed her thighs. "Rossweiss," Naruto said. Sorry. Just give me a second, okay? HMPH. If you're gonna take your sweet time, then I'm not gonna let this chance go to waste." As Rossweiss tried to gather her courage, Kaneko pounced on Naruto, dragging him down into a searing hot kiss as she filled his mouth with her tongue. The Nekusho had entered her second form. Her split tail was wagging back and forth as she worked his mouth over. Her tongue tasted like cinnamon. She was completely naked except for her socks, but that somehow made her look even more erotic. Naruto had caught a glimpse of her hairless pussy before she pounced. He wanted to make a joke about hairless kittens, but that would have been inappropriate considering their situation. After satisfying herself with his mouth, Kaneko began kissing and licking Naruto's chest. His breathing picked up as she left a glistening trail of saliva down his pectorals and abs. When she reached his boxers, she didn't even bother sliding them down his legs, instead ripping them off. The loud tearing sound made him wince, but then a soft groan escaped his lips as Kaneko began licking him like a lollipop. "What are you doing, KFC? Get over here." Kaneko paused long enough to look at Revel. "And me?" asked a blushing Revel. "Do you see any other Pfennigs here? Come on. Give me a hand. No, give me a tongue." "Don't speak so lewdly." Despite her snappish comeback, Revel did come over. She knelt beside Kaneko and gazed at the throbbing object in front of her. Her cheeks flushed even more heavily at the sight, but she followed Kaneko's example. Her tongue emerged from her mouth and she ran it from his balls all the way to the tip, then went back down. Now with two gorgeous women licking him, Naruto could hardly contain himself at the sensations running through his body. Their warm tongues on his hot cock was enough to nearly make him lose all of his control. He placed a hand on their heads, partly to run his fingers through their hair, but also to steady himself. His legs felt like jelly. While Kaneko and Revel were licking him off and Kaneko had begun fondling his balls, Rias got behind Rosweiss and started groping the other woman's breasts. "It's kind of hot, isn't it?" asked Rias, her voice heavy, heaty, and filled with enough passion that Naruto had to bite his lip to stop from coming. "I know I should hate this. By society's standards today, I should hate the sight of this, but I can't deny there's something primal and sexy about seeing Naruto getting sucked off by two other women like that." "Why you think so?" Rosweiss asked, her own breathing heavy. Do you not think so?" No, you are right. It's on." Rosweiss's last word was hampered by a moan when Rias pinched her nipple, which quickly stiffened between the other girl's skilled fingers. "Let's give Naruto a show," Rias moaned into Rosweiss's ear. With one hand, Rias spread Rosweiss's legs apart, revealing her already glistening snatch. Rosweiss looked embarrassed. But then Rias reached down and spread her lips apart before she began rubbing her. The single delicate finger sank into the Valkyrie's soft lips. A loud moan was ejected from Rosweiss's throat as the red-haired devil stimulated her most sensitive area. Her back arched, her body shook, and sweat broke out on her skin. This sight proved too much for Naruto. Seeing Rias quickly and easily bring Rosweiss to her first ever orgasm while Kaneko and Revel licked his dick like it was a popsicle was too stimulating. He gritted his teeth as his hips bucked of their own volition. Then he winced as his seed sprayed all over Revel's and Kaneko's faces and hair. "'s so sticky," Revel complained. "I'm sorry," Naruto mumbled, but he couldn't put his heart into it. Seeing Revel and Kaneko covered in his spunk made his partially flaccid dick grow erect once more. It might even be harder than it was before. "Don't be. This works out well," Kaneko said. Naruto had no idea what she meant by that, but then the Nekusho leaned into Revel and began licking his cum off the other woman. Revel squirmed and moaned as Kaneko's tongue left glistening trails on her skin. However, she didn't put up a fight. Her cheeks were flushed like they'd been hit by a fire jutsu. Even so, she followed Kaneko's example. With two women licking each other before him, both beautiful in contrasting ways, Naruto felt like his balls were about to explode once again. They even scooped up some of his seed into their mouths and shared it between them in a passionate kiss. "Fuck. This was hot." "Naruto," Rias said as a panting Rosweiss rested her head against the redhead's shoulder. "She's ready for you." Nodding, Naruto went over to the bed and leaned down as he positioned himself near Rosweiss's entrance. The woman blinked several times as she came to. When she saw their positions, her eyes widened. "Are you ready?" asked Naruto. Rosweiss hesitated for a moment before nodding, "Yes." "Then I'm putting it in." Naruto groaned as he pushed the tip of his head into her opening. Her lips stretched around him. He pushed a little further. Rosweiss groaned. But it was a mixture of pleasure and pain as he stretched her out. Finally, he reached her hymen. "Are you ready?" asked a breathless Naruto. Rosweiss couldn't even say that much, she just nodded. "Then here I go." With a quick thrust, Naruto bottomed out inside of her, breaking through her hymen in one go. Rosweiss yelped, but Rias's body began glowing as she used a healing spell to soothe the woman's pain. This allowed Naruto to quickly set a steady pace. He pulled his hips back, biting his lips as the sensation of her rigid walls encapsulated him, then pushed himself back in. It wasn't long before the sound of his hips slapping against Roswice's became mixed with their moans. On. Ah. Hyk. N Naruto. SS so good on. It feels so good. Me too. Being inside of you, it feels great. But I'm so hyk, embarrassed. Naruto wasn't able to say anything else as he focused on pleasing Roswice. He watched her facial expressions, adjusting his speed and the power of his thrusts according to the sounds she made and the expressions she wore. Her breasts jiggled up and down. They were coated in sweat, glistening in the light. Naruto longed to take them into his mouth, but now wasn't the time. Instead, he leaned down until her tits were rubbing against his chest and kissed her hard. Roswice responded eagerly to the kiss. What she lacked in experience she made up for in enthusiasm. It was enough that Naruto knew he wouldn't be able to hold out much longer. That was why he reached down and rubbed her clit. Quote! Roswice screamed into his mouth as she came. Her walls hardened around him as all the muscles in her body stiffened for several seconds as an orgasm washed over her. She went limp seconds after. When Naruto pulled back, he saw that she wasn't unconscious, but her breathing was heavy and her eyes were glazed over as if the lights were on but no one was home. A grinning Rias moved back, allowing Roswice to rest on the bed instead of her. Naruto, lay down right here. Rias indicated the bed. As Naruto did what she asked, lying lengthwise across the bed, Rias looked at Revel and Kaneko. It's your turn, you two. He didn't know what Rias was plotting, but Revel and Kaneko soon got on either side of him. He was still a little confused, but then the crossed legs with each other and Naruto was engulfed in an incredibly wet warmth as the two girls scissored him between their thighs. With their plump and engorged pussies rubbing against him, creating a warm lubrication that let them slide against his cock, they began bucking their hips at the same time. It created an intense sensation that made him throw his head back, like lightning jolting up his spine. Rias chose that moment to sit on his face. Do me too, she commanded. It was a command Naruto was more than willing to obey. Naruto stuck out his tongue and probed Rias's insides with it. He reached out, grabbing a handful of her firm ass as he buried his face in her snatch. The scent of her arousal made him throb and twitch even more erratically than before, which further increased the sensations Revel and Kaneko were sending him by their constant rubbing. Rias began moaning loudly as he flicked her clit between his tongue. Yes. Yes. Oh, fuck yes. When Rias's clit began pulsating, he knew she was about to come. He'd been struggling to keep himself from coming as well. However, with Revel and Kaneko sandwiching his dick between their thighs, it was only a matter of time before he lost it. His end came before Rias. He felt his entire body shudder before he spurted more of his seed all over the two girls again. Because his face was buried in Rias's cooch, he couldn't see, but just the thought was enough to get him hard again. That was the moment Rias's juices squirted all over his face. The woman released an intense scream as she came. Her legs clenched around his head. However, the pressure eased seconds later as Rias removed herself from his face. He looked up and became entranced when he saw Rias, Revel, and Kaneko sharing a passionate three-way makeout session. They were licking his seed off each other's bodies like it was white chocolate syrup. The sight of Rias and Revel trailing their tongues across Kaneko's tight body caused him to go rigid. Kaneko moaned and thrashed as Rias sucked her nipple into her mouth and flicked it with her tongue. Combine their actions with the heady scent of sex permeating the air, and he was already lost. Naruto glanced down at where Rias's still twitching pussy lay visible. Getting up, he didn't hesitate to shove his throbbing member into her glistening lips. Rias released a loud moan around Kaneko's nipple, which caused the catgirl to cry out as she wrapped her arms around Rias. With her mouth hanging open, Revel was able to slip her tongue inside and begin kissing Kaneko with earth-shattering passion. As the two's tongues became entwined, Naruto thrust himself against Rias. The sound of her ass smacking against his hips mixed with their moans. He looked down to see the way her butt jiggled every time he pounded into her. Perhaps in response to his actions, Rias began grinding her ass against him. The circular motions created an even tighter, greater sensation that heightened the feelings of his already sensitive member. A moan alerted Naruto to Roswice waking up. He looked over to find the woman moaning and panting as she masturbated to the sight of the four of them. Seeing the normally strict woman with her tongue hanging open as she fingered herself and pawed at her breasts was enough to make Naruto lose it. However, even after coming, he didn't feel the least bit tired. so he kept pounding into Rias's pussy until he felt her inner walls tighten around him. As her juices spurted out and trailed down her thighs, Naruto retracted his hips. "Revel, come here please." Obediently crawling over to him, Revel didn't hesitate to straddle his waist. He was sitting up, his legs stretched out behind him. Naruto grabbed 2 handfuls of Revel's butt and eased her onto his cock. Revel's moan echoed to the ceiling before her mouth was hampered with his. Her arms went around his chest, legs locking around his waist, as Naruto lifted and pushed Revel onto his cock. Their bodies had grown slick with sweat. The feeling of her sweaty breasts rubbing against his chest created a delicious friction that he wanted to get more of. Naruto stopped kissing Revel so he could lean down and begin kissing, licking, and biting her neck. With her mouth no longer restrained, Revel released several beautiful, lyrical screams as she threw her head back. "On, ah, ah, hyk, hrk, on." Naruto nibbled on her collarbone as he felt his balls tighten again and release another load. Yet even though he had come again, he still didn't feel at all tired. If anything, the feeling of being inside of Revel's tight hole made him remain harder than diamonds. He continued lifting Revel on and off his shaft until he felt her muscles lock and quiver in place. Only after her juices began staining his thighs did he lean back. Revel remained on his chest, her breathing deep and heavy, but she soon began shaking her hips and grinding against him again. It was like she had been possessed. She wasn't the only one either. Rias, Kaneko, and Rosswise were all coming over to him. A wanton look reflected in their eyes. He was sure his eyes had the same expression. As Revel leaned back and began riding him like a cowgirl, her breasts bouncing as if they were a pair of beach balls, Naruto realized he was in for a really long night. He didn't mind that at all. "Devil ninja, wake up. Nya haha, how long do you plan on sleeping?" Naruto groaned as something bushy smacked him in the face. Blinking his bleary eyes open, he grumbled to himself and tried to roll over, away from whatever had hit him, but he soon realized that he couldn't because several soft, warm objects were pressing down on him from all sides. As he became more alert, his nose picked up an intense smell. Of course he recognized this scent. The smell of sex. Memories from the previous night came back to him in a flood. He, Rias, Rosswise, Revel, and Kaneko had sex for the entire night and well into the morning. Even now he could recall the softness of their flesh, the way their tits bounced, the feeling of their pussies, tongues, and asses wrapping around his cock. He remembered how Kaneko had sucked him off with that cute little mouth, how Rias and Rosswise had given him a double tit job, how Revel had blushed when his comb shot all over her as she rubbed her hand along his slick shaft. Every moment was seared into his mind. Naruto pressed a hand to his face as his cheeks turned bright red. How many times had he come last night? He honestly couldn't remember. He didn't even think it was possible to orgasm that many times. It was like something had taken a hold of him, arousing him beyond his ability to comprehend. It was like. "How are you feeling, Naruto?" Turning his head, Naruto saw past Rias's red hair and stared into the golden eyes of Kuroka, who wore the biggest cat-like grin he had ever seen. She looked so satisfied with herself that he was reminded of a cat after it had eaten the biggest, fattest, juiciest rat ever. It made him very suspicious. "Kuroka," he said with a frown, "just what was in those incense you lit the other night?" "So you figured it out, huh?" Kuroka leaned back and crossed her arms. Naruto realized she was sitting on a chair. "They're made from a special homemade blend of my own creation. I infused a powerful aphrodisiac in them that works with the body's natural chemical balance to stimulate intense feelings of arousal. It has the added benefit of prolonging your arousal and also helping to produce more sperm, allowing you to last much longer. Since your goal was to have sex all night, we needed this so you 5 would have the staying power to keep coming even after your bodies gave out." "I see." Naruto didn't know what to say. "Anyway, how are you feeling?" asked Kuroka. "I feel pretty good, actually." He wasn't even all that sore. Given how much sex he had last night, Naruto expected his hips to feel like they'd been busted, or his dick to feel like the skin had been rubbed off, but he honestly didn't even feel the least bit of stress or soreness. "Kurama, it worked," Kurama said in a low growl. "You've regained a bit of your chakra. It isn't much, though. You only managed to get about 10% of your chakra back, which means about 70% of it is still with Yami. However, even a little bit helps."
In other words, we're still not at the point where we can contend with Yami unless we have some other trick up our sleeves. Basically. Well, it looks like your idea worked.
Naruto scooted out from underneath the girls until he could sit up. Kaneko and Revel, who slept on top of him, shifted around to get comfortable on his legs. However, it still isn't really enough to fight against Yami. Maybe if my opponent was someone else, but Yami is me. He knows everything I know. His fighting style, ninjutsu, and everything else are the same. In a battle against myself, victory will be impossible to achieve unless I have more chakra than him.
That is unfortunate, but at least we know this works, Kuroka said, tapping her chin with an index finger. If we weren't pressed for time, we could probably do this several more times and steal all of your chakra back, but that's not going to happen now.
You got that right, Ria said as she sat up, rubbing her eyes. Of course, even if we did have the time, I'm not sure we could do this again for a while. I'm really sore. Me too, Kaneko added, still lying on his legs with Revel. How long are you going to lay there? Asked Naruto. Until I can move again. Naruto sighed, but he realized the girls didn't have his insane healing ability. It looked like he would be stuck there until the girls regained their mobility. Devil Ninja, it took the girls 1 hour to get ready. By the time they came into the living room, it was to find that everyone who would be involved in this operation was already waiting for them. Naruto found himself staring at Issei, who was glaring at him with tears in his eyes and snot dribbling down his nose. The boy looked angry, however, he also looked like he was staring at a god.
Are you okay, Eyes? I am, so jealous of you, Issei mumbled.
Naruto wasn't sure what Issei was talking about. It must have shown on his face because a blushing Irina explained. That is, everyone else who was living in the West building with you, heard your, what you guys were doing last night. Her cheeks suddenly lit up like a bonfire. She looked about frantically, then settled on staring at her hands as she twiddled her thumbs. It was actually a little hard to sleep with you making so much noise.
Naruto glanced at the others who had been sleeping in a room next to his and realized most of them were blushing. Lefay Pendragon looked especially embarrassed, but she was also biting her lip as if she wanted to say something.
It sounded like you were having a lot of fun, Xenovia added. She was the only one not blushing. Truth be told, I'm really interested in knowing how the act of baby making went down last night. I'm even tempted to ask if I can watch next time. The answer would be no, Ria said. No one who isn't a part of Naruto's harem will ever be able to watch what we do, and if you are part of it, you probably won't be watching anyway. Xenovia shrugged as if to say she didn't care. Naruto used that time to look at the others. They were all arrayed around the room. Not only was Team Valley and the Sea Tree Peerage present, but Metatron was also with them. He wondered what the Archangel was doing here. Sure, he lived with them, but Naruto asked Metatron would be leaving for the front lines with Azazel, Michael, and Sirzex. What are you doing here? He asked. I am here to help you reach the base where Ophis and Kuno are being held, Dagazaru, Metatron said. Thanks to Sao Sao, we know that the ritual will take place in the underworld, in Lucifod, the original capital of the Satan territory.
It seems Rizvam has set up his base there. In Lucifod, there is a large castle in the center of the city, which is where Rizvam's base is located. Metatron held up his hand and revealed that he had one of those basic summoning circle cards. I have been given this by Sirzex, Dagazaru. I will be using this to transport you all to just outside of Lucifod. After that, you shall make your way into the city, infiltrate Rizvam's base, and rescue Ophis and Kuno, Dagazaru.
The rescue operation seemed simple enough. However, they were keeping it simple for the reason that a simple plan was more easily adaptable. They didn't know what they would find in Lucifod, which meant there was no telling how well any plan would hold up. Of course, they were going against Rizvam Lucifer himself. He was a man who had the powers of an ultimate class devil, which meant a battle with him would be a hard-fought one. There was also no telling how many people they would be up against. Do you know how long we have before Rizvam enacts the ritual to take Ophis's powers? Asked Rias.
We do not, Dagazaru, Metatron said. However, I believe he will wait until he has received confirmation that you have arrived in hell before enacting the ritual. Rizvam is a cruel man who enjoys toying with his enemies. It would not surprise me if he wanted to give you hope that you could rescue Ophis in time, and then take that hope away at the very last moment.
This guy sounds like a real piece of work, Kaneko muttered as Naruto stroked her head. HMPH. You guys haven't seen anything yet. Valley crossed his arms as he lounged on the couch. One leg crossed over the other. Rizavam is such an incredible bastard that he even killed his own son.
Wait, isn't Rizvim's son? Issei began. Valley nodded. Yeah, his son was my dear old man. Oh, don't go getting all teary-eyed on me. Rizvan Lucifer was just as much of a bastard as Rizvam. When I learned my father was killed by his own pop's hands, I was ecstatic.
Valley's words caused everyone to grow silent, perhaps out of hesitance or maybe respect for what he'd been through. Everyone there with the exception of a few had suffered terribly at the hands of others. It was clear to Naruto, and probably to people like Kiba and Gasper, that Valley's life had not been pleasant. Just from his words alone, Naruto could guess that his father had not treated him as a father would treat a son. Why else would Valley say something like this? Whatever kind of person Rizavam Lucifer is, it doesn't change the fact that we have to go and rescue Ophis from him, Sona said. You're right. Rias nodded and turned to Metatron. When do we leave? You are leaving right now, DxD. Metatron channeled his angelic powers into the summoning seal, which caused a massive magic circle with a Christian cross in the very center to appear. Do not worry. This summoning symbol has purified my angelic powers so no harm will come to devils, DxD. Now, everyone, please step onto the summoning circle, and you will be taken to the underworld. Naruto was the first to walk over to the summoning circle, but Kaneko, Revel, Rias, Roswise, and then Irina and Lefei quickly followed him. Issei and his group, consisting of Akano, Asia, Irina, Xenovia, and Rainier came next, followed by Kiba and Gasper. The Sona Peerage and Team Valley came next. When everyone was on the magic circle, it glowed a deep golden color instead of the traditional crimson. Good luck, DxD, Metatron said as he stepped back and allowed them to be transported. In that instant, Naruto and the others found themselves standing, not in their house, but in a valley of mountains. They were standing on a hill that overlooked a city with numerous large buildings. The city looked like it was built in a crater or a canyon. While many of the buildings near the center were large, none of them were bigger than the massive palace in the very middle of the city. It was so big it looked like even the mountains surrounding Lukafid weren't as large. So that is Lukafid? Asked Kiba. It is. Arthur pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. It's been a long time since I've been here. I didn't realize you'd been here before, Kiba said. I have with Valley when we were part of the Chaos Brigade. Ah. Valley stared at the city with a look of disgust on his face. His eyes were narrowed as he clenched his fists. It was clear to everyone that he was not interested in returning to this place, which made Naruto realize Ophis must be pretty important to Valley on a personal level. Well, she had once told him that Valley was her first friend. I believe we should head out, Rias said. No one disagreed. Should we split up? Asked Sona. No, Rias shook her head. Let's travel into Lukafid together. If we need to split up for whatever reason, we can do it after we've infiltrated Rizavim's main base. Her plan was sound enough and everyone agreed with it. Thus, they set out for Lukafid with thoughts of rescuing Kuno and Ophis engraved in their hearts. Devil Ninja, they walked through the streets of Lukafid, which were surprisingly empty. Naruto couldn't figure out what was going on. Not only was there no one in the streets, but when he looked through the windows of buildings, he couldn't see anyone either. It was like they had all vanished. We're inside a barrier, Kuroka informed him. That's why you don't see anyone. We've been separated from the underworld and are in a dimension similar to the ones used in raiding games. A barrier? Naruto frowned. Why didn't I sense one? Probably because you've closed yourself off to the natural energy of the world. Kuroka shrugged. This barrier is quite subtle, so only a pure-blood devil like Rias and Sona over there, or someone with an innate connection to nature energy like Sharon and I, would be able to sense it. Rias, Naruto turned to look at the redhead, who slowly nodded her head. We have entered a barrier that separates us from the normal dimension. My guess is that it was created in preparation for summoning Samael. Summoning a creature like this would undoubtedly be felt by every high-class devil in the underworld. Rizavam would need to put up a barrier if he didn't want people discovering what he was doing. I'm certain the only people he wants intruding on him is us. I suppose that makes sense, Naruto said, nodding. Still, it's kinda creepy, not having anyone else around here. Irina held her arms and shivered. I'm not sure I like how creepy this feels. You and me both, Xenovia agreed. They soon made their way to the massive castle-like tower structure in the very center of the city. It looked even bigger up close. The architecture reminded Naruto of modern-day skyscrapers in Japan, but this one had a unique twist in that several spikes jutted out from the sides like stakes. It gave the entire building a very "This looks so cliched," Naruto muttered. It's like someone tried their hardest to create an imposing evil castle using architectural themes they found in Castlevania. Castlevania has better taste than this, Kaneko muttered. I agree, Gasper suddenly shouted. You can't compare this place to the castle in Castlevania. The style of architecture in that game is very reminiscent to the Baroque period that began in the early 1600s in Europe. They look nothing alike. Naruto had never heard Gasper so adamantly defend something before, but he did know the young half-vampire liked to play video games. He had all the Castlevania games in his collection. He supposed him saying this place looked like the castle from those games was something of an insult. That said, he wasn't going to change his opinion. How do we get in? Asked Rosweiss. I don't see an entrance. It did indeed look like this place had no door. At the very least, Naruto couldn't see a front door, though it did have several windows. He wondered if this meant they needed to use some other means to enter, or if maybe they could create their own entrance.
I doubt it, Rias said. When Naruto looked at her, she smiled. You were thinking about creating your own entrance, right? You were probably planning to drill this wall with a Rasengan or something. I don't think that would be a good idea. This place probably has some form of defense that we don't know about. Trying to break through will likely result in those defenses activating. We might be able to defeat whatever defense comes up, but it will take time.
So we're trying to find an entrance, Naruto pointed out. Rias conceded. You two are fortunate that I have already thought of a way in. Sona pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Lukafit has a very unique subterranean level that works like a series of interconnected passageways. If we can find the entrance to those passageways, we should be able to find a way to enter Rizavem's lair without tripping any traps. And how should we do that? Asked Rias. With a smirk on his face, Valley stepped forward and raised his hand. Did you people forget that my name is Valley Lucifer? I might not have been back to this hellhole in a good while, but I at least remember how to enter my grandfather's base. He chuckled. If you people hadn't been so caught up in your own conversation, I would have been able to tell you this much sooner, and we would have saved time. Oh, whatever, Rias snapped. If you know how to enter this place, just tell us already. All right. However, before I lead you all to the entrance, we should probably deal with them. At that moment, Valley pointed at something in the sky. Naruto, Rias, Sona, and the others lifted their heads and gazed at the sky as well, curious to know what he meant. However, when they saw the hundreds of black specks blotting out the underworld's unique sky, alarm bells went off in their heads.
The enemy. Sona shouted. Looks like it, Valley confirmed. Those are definitely devils working for my grandfather. Look, I can even see them being led by Shalba Beelzebub.
What should we do? Issei wondered. Naruto frowned as he stared at the massive force above them, then thought about their own forces. Their forces didn't even exceed 20. Even if they combined their forces, there was no way they could defeat them all unless Naruto reverse summoned Kurama, which took time and had a time limit. Naruto was saving Kurama as an ultimate trump card in case they ran into Yami. He couldn't summon him here. Let's split up, he suddenly said. Sona, can you and your peerage join forces with Kuroka and Biku? Use a combination of guerrilla and urban warfare to fight them off. I believe Saji should even be able to match Shalba if he summons Vitra like he did in Kyoto.
I see you're deciding to give orders despite being Rias's pawn. Sona wore a somewhat complicated smile as she shrugged. But it's a good idea, so we'll go with that. She turned to Kuroka and Baiko. So long as you two are also okay with it.
Kuroka and Biku looked at Valley, who shrugged at them as if to say they could do what they want, then turned back to Sona. KKK. We don't mind at all, Biku said as he twirled his staff around. In fact, bashing in some devils might be just what the doctor ordered. It will be good to stretch out my claws, Kuroka added.
I'll also help them out, Rebel announced, to the shock of everyone, including Naruto. Turning to him, the blonde Phoenix gave him a brave smile as she said, I'm better at creating strategies than fighting, and strategies are more useful when there are multiple forces involved in a large-scale battle. I'm afraid I wouldn't be much help if we had to fight against Yami or Rizvam Lucifer. I understand. Naruto placed his hands on Revel's shoulders. With a small grin, he leaned down and pressed his lips against Revel's. He wanted to make it a lasting kiss, but they didn't have time, so he pulled back before she could return his kiss. Kick their asses, Revel.
Yes, I will, Revel said with a nod. We don't have any more time here, Sona added. Let's move. Sona and her peerage plus Revel, Bhikkhu, and Kuroka quickly headed out to intercept the incoming devil army.
Baiko and Kuroka hopped onto that yellow cloud thing he remembered seeing Baiko use before, and the two of them blitzed straight through the enemy lines. From this distance, most of them couldn't see what was happening, but Naruto could at least tell that Kuroka was combining senjutsu and yujutsu to fire off intense blasts of ki that annihilated a number of lesser devils. Meanwhile, Baiko was using an extendable pole to sweep away the adversaries in front of them.
We should move out too. Rias turned to Valley. Are you going to lead us? HMPH. I thought you'd never ask, Valley said. While the devil army erupted into disarray above as Bhikkhu and Kuroka made a hasty retreat after their blitzkrieg, the group Naruto was with followed after Valley. They ran some distance away from the massive building. Eventually, they reached something that looked a lot like a manhole. Valley removed the covering, revealing a large hole in the ground, which was so dark even Naruto couldn't see down it. Come on, Valley said as he hopped down the hole. Well, you heard the man. Rias grimaced as she walked up to the hole. I hope to Satan this isn't a sewer. Praying to your brother sounds a little weird, Kaneko said. Oh, shut it. The good-natured banter ceased a second later as Rias, followed by Kaneko, Naruto, Issei, Rainer, and the others dropped down below. There were a few of them, like Asia, who weren't exactly athletically inclined. Issei fortunately caught Asia before she could faceplant on the hard stone ground. Kaneko ended up catching Gasper as he jumped down, though Naruto was certain the half-vampire could have flown down if he wanted to. Despite Naruto's initial belief that this world was dark, the tunnel they found themselves in was actually quite bright. It seemed there were several lights around to guide their path, though they were spaced at intervals and the areas where there was no light in between that, making these odd spaces of light in total darkness. Well, this isn't as bad as I expected, Rias muttered. What were you expecting? Asked Valley. A sewer. Yes, actually. Sorry to disappoint. So what exactly is this place? Asked Issei. Hell if I know. Valley shrugged as he began leading their group away. This place was built sometime during the Great War between the three factions. If I had to guess, I'd say this was something like an underground shelter where devils could flee to if the war turned against them. As they were walking, Naruto suddenly found himself unable to move. At first, he thought his legs had stiffened up, but when he looked down, he realized there was a dark space underneath his feet and what's more, his feet had actually disappeared inside of this dark space. What the hell? Naruto shouted, alerting the others to what was happening. Holy crap! Naruto-sensei's legs have disappeared, Issei shouted in shock. They haven't disappeared, Valley informed them. Someone opened a gate to the void between dimensions, damn. Naruto. 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 4 sets of voices screamed his name as Rias, Kaneko, Rosweiss, and Irina reached out for him. However, just before they could, Naruto felt something tug on his legs, and then he vanished into the portal and was spat back out seconds later. He gawked for a minute as he tumbled through space. Orienting himself, he quickly spun around and looked at the portal he'd been pulled through, only to find that it was closing right up. Naruto released a deep breath. I expected you to confront me, but I didn't realize you were capable of pulling me into the dimensional gap like this. It's a relatively recent skill I acquired, a voice that was just like his said. Naruto turned around and found someone who could have been his twin brother floating a few feet in front of him. A mixture of emotions flooded Naruto as he stared at the other person, whose crimson eyes were filled with so much hate it was pitiful. Yami, hello, Naruto. Yami smiled at him. I've come to claim the rest of your chakra. Devil Ninja. Everyone stared at the spot where Naruto had vanished. As she stared with them, Rias felt turmoil race through her heart. She wanted more than anything to tear open a dimensional rift, travel into the dimensional gap, and find Naruto. She struggled with this feeling for a long while before taking a deep breath. Let's keep going, she said, clenching her fists. But what about Naruto-sensei? Asked Issei. Shouldn't we do something to help him? What can we do? Rias gave Issei a helpless smile filled with self-deprecation. Arthur over there might be able to open a dimensional rift with Caliburn, but even if he did, it would mean not only further dividing our forces but getting in Naruto's way. Issei stopped short after her last comment, and Rias grimaced. What he's fighting right now is a person so strong I doubt even my brother could fight against him. We just had to trust in Naruto. While Issei clenched his fist, Rias struggled with her own feelings. She was worried. Her confidence in Naruto was absolute. She believed that any creature he fought against, even a god, would lose to Naruto, but what he was fighting now was not a god. He was fighting an overpowered version of himself, a dark Naruto that had more power than the current Naruto did. It was the worst kind of opponent anyone could face. I believe in Naruto, Kaneko said at last. He's not the kind of guy who would go down without a fight, Kiba agreed. Naruto is really strong, Gasper also nodded. Well, he was the person Ophis found herself attracted to, Valley added, running a hand through his hair. I don't think a guy like that would die no matter who he fought. Now I want to fight him. I think we should trust in Naruto and keep moving, Lefei said as well. You guys, Issei looked at everyone in the tunnel with him. That's the best thing I've heard all day, Rainier said with a small sneer. We need to keep moving, or have you people forgotten why we came all this fucking way? Oofufufu, this rude fallen angel certainly has a mouth on her, Akeno said. Shut it. The decision to continue moving was unanimous, so everyone quickly began following Valley again, who led them to a plain-looking metal door with a lock. Valley didn't slow down as he blasted the lock apart and kicked the door open. Rias was right behind the half-devil as he ran up a set of stairs, which quickly emerged into a large hallway decorated in gaudy purple carpet. This is my grandfather's base of operations and his home, Valley said as he began walking. We'll want to be careful while moving through here. There's no telling what kind of traps he might have laid out. Do you have any idea where Ophis might be? Asked Rias.
If Ophis really is here, then she will probably be in the dungeon, Valley said after a few moments. There's a prison here, but it's also where any rituals, experiments, and torture takes place. One of the rooms is a wide open space that's perfect for summoning a creature like Samael.
Then quickly lead us there, Rias said. I'd show you the way even if you didn't try to order me around. With Valley leading them, they traveled through several hallways before emerging from one and entering a large room. It was an entrance hall of some sort. There was no doorway leading outside, but the marble floor and giant staircase leading to other sections of the building made it clear that this was something like a traditional entrance hall. Maybe there had been a door at one point, but it was removed. Rias could not say for sure. In the center of this room were two people. One of them was Euclid and the other was Grendel. I've been waiting for you all to arrive. Euclid smiled as he looked at the group of people before focusing on Rosweiss. Have you thought about my offer? Isn't it obvious? I refuse, Rosweiss said. I'm not even going to consider your offer? That's too bad, Euclid sighed before his eyes narrowed. It seems I have been rejected by you once again. I guess this means force really will be necessary. We'll have to divide our forces here, Rias said, biting her lip. Valley, Rainier, Asia, and Lefei, please go on ahead and rescue Ophis and Kuno. The rest of us will fight against these two. At present, their forces were Akeno, Asia, Arthur, Gasper, Issei, Kaneko, Kiba, Irina, Lefei, Rainier, Rosweiss, Valley, Xenovia, and herself. That was 14 people. In a battle of one versus many, having too many people on their side could prove to be a hindrance. Nothing was worse than friendly fire. That meant they needed to divide their forces in such a way that it wouldn't be as difficult to fight one person as a unit without getting in each other's way. While you five rescue Kuno and Ophis, Rosweiss, Gasper, Irina, and I will fight against Euclid. Meanwhile, I want Arthur, Akeno, Kiba, Kaneko, and Xenovia to battle Grendel. Asia, we'll be relying on you to heal us if we get injured. If Rias was being honest, she would have wanted Valley or Issei to join in the battle against Grendel, but rescuing Ophis was too important to have their strongest members fight someone whose only purpose was to stall them.
Pete, please leave this to me, Rias. Asia said. I still don't like being told what to do by you, Rainier grumbled. But I guess we don't have much choice. We'll rescue Ophis. Issei agreed. We're counting on you, said Rias as she stared at Euclid.
While Issei, Valley, Rainier, Asia, and LeFay ran toward a door on the opposite side of the room, Rias narrowed her eyes at Euclid and Grendel, who did nothing to stop the group from leaving. This merely confirmed to her that Rizavam wanted Issei and Valley to reach him. He was probably going to use Samael against them. She would have told them to stay here, but once again, they were the two strongest people present right now. They were the only ones who had a chance of defeating Rizavam. Gasper, Rias began. Euclid has an artificial sacred gear that works similarly to your forbidden Balor view.
I'd like you to use your powers to keep him from being able to use his. Rosweiss, you and I will bombard him with magical attacks from a distance. Meanwhile, I want Irina to harass him with close-range attacks. She looked at Irina. Don't let him attack you. He might specialize in magic and making sacred gears, but he is still a high-class devil. His physical abilities are far above a human's.
You don't need to worry about that, Irina said with a smile, because I am an angel. Right, have you people finished making plans? Asked Euclid with a daring grin. Because if so, then I believe it's time we got started. The moment he said this, Grendel released a shrill and excited roar as he charged toward Rias and the others.
Zenobia quickly summoned Durandal and released a war cry as she swung it at Grendel, who blocked the attack with ease. As his durable hands scraped against the powerful holy sword, Kiba and Arthur raced around Grendel. Kiba summoned a holy demonic sword and attacked from the left, while Arthur swung Excalibur ruler hard. Both attacks hit. A loud noise echoed out like steel striking steel. However, even with such a fierce attack, Grendel didn't have a single scratch on him.
Ha 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 ha. Grendel laughed. You people need to stop attacking me with such pathetic weapons. Are you even fucking trying? Why can't you be more like the Red Dragon Emperor? At least his hits don't feel like I'm being tickled. Sorry for not being a Red Dragon Emperor, Kiba said with a grunt as he leapt back. HMPH, I've got your Red Dragon right here, Kaneko shouted. Before Grendel had time to dodge, Kaneko, who now had two tails instead of one, ducked low and slammed her fists into his chest. An explosion of ki erupted from her palms and blasted Grendel off his feet. While it appeared like he might be injured at first, the group soon discovered that he was unharmed when he landed on the ground several meters from them. Steam rose from his chest, but there wasn't a single scratch to be seen. Kaneko clicked her tongue. TCH. Looks like I'll need to use more power. That wasn't a bad hit, Grendel complimented. I actually felt that one. I like it. But now it's my turn to bring the pain. As the Grendel rushed toward Kaneko, who was more than willing to meet his attacks head-on with the help of Zenobia, Rias turned toward Euclid as the man strode toward them at a sedate pace. Get ready to use your powers, Gasper, Rias said to him. I'm ready, bucko, Gasper said in a determined voice as his eyes shifted into those of the forbidden Balor view. Rosweiss, Irina, I'm counting on you both, Rias said. We're right beside you. Just leave this to me. I will smite this devil in the name of our Lord, Michael. Irina summoned a light sword to her hand and rushed toward Euclid, who scoffed at what he no doubt deemed a foolish action. The area around his hand began glowing. Yet just as it looked like he was about to escape with his time-stopping power, his entire hand suddenly froze. It was only temporary. However, Irina used that 1 second of time to swing her sword at him. Euclid had no choice but to summon what looked like a holy sword. Irina's weapon slammed into the holy sword, which shattered, but it gave Euclid enough time to overpower Gasper's magic and escape from her attack. Using her memories of the fight from their last battle, Rias guessed at where Euclid would be and fired off a wave of demonic energy at that spot. Euclid appeared just seconds before the wave was about to envelope the area. With a grimace, he swept his hand out with a powerful gesture, slamming his own demonic energy into the wave. A powerful explosion erupted between the two powers. Rias and the others had to leap back and cover their faces with their hands as the intense winds pushed against them. You really are a troublesome opponent, Rias Gremory, Euclid said in a dark voice. However, do not think that your tactics will win against me. I'm far more powerful than all of you combined, and I still have many sacred gears that I haven't shown you yet. As he said this, Euclid took out a small green gem. He crushed it in his hands. A strange yet powerful energy undulation rippled through the air as his hand began glowing. His arm was only covered in the strange light for a few moments.
When the light disappeared, a red gauntlet made of segmented armor that resembled dragon scales was covering his arm. Rias's eyes went wide as she looked at it.
Don't tell me, Irina muttered in shock. Rias gritted her teeth. So you've managed to create an artificial boosted gear as well? It's just a prototype, Euclid admitted with a shrug. I was able to analyze the data I acquired when Grendel fought against Issei Hyodo and the others. I actually have several sacred gears based off their abilities, but I felt this was the best one to use in my present situation. Grinning, Euclid bent his knees in a fighting stance and beckoned to her and the others. Well, aren't you going to fight me? I'm eager to see how this artificial boosted gear works in a real battle. Devil Ninja, Revel did not take part in the actual battle between Sona's peerage and the old Satan faction's forces. She hid herself far to the back where none of the old Satan faction could see her, watching from inside of a building, where she directed their forces to attack from. Sona. Have Tsubaki and Tomo pull back. Kuroka and Biku blitz their forces again. While she didn't receive acknowledgement in the form of words, Tsubaki and Raya did pull away from the fight above, which was like a chaotic throng as dozens of devils tried to attack the pair from all angles. It normally would have been impossible for them to escape. However, Revel directed Momo and Raya to lay down suppressive fire that opened a hole in the old Satan faction's formation. As Tsubaki and Tomo escaped from the center of the enemy's formation, Kuroka and Biku rushed out from behind a building, slamming into the old Satan faction. The pair proceeded to use their superior firepower to decimate numerous devils in the blink of an eye. Then they retreated. Shalba Beelzebub, flying in the back of this formation, screamed in frustration as he tried and failed to kill the two.
Ignore the weaklings. Go after those two now. Under Shalba's enraged orders, a contingent of the old Satan faction soldiers went after Baiko and Kuroka as they disappeared into a building.
Tsubasa and Saji. You two are up. Attack the enemy once they enter the building. The devil faction soldiers entered the building, which was hiding Saji and Tsubasa. Kuroka and Biku should have already slipped out of the back. Revel could not see what was happening inside of the building, but seconds after the old Satan faction forces entered, screams erupted from the inside. Following that was a moment of silence. What happened? Shalba Beelzebub demanded. This is Saji, a voice suddenly came over Revel's communicator. We've eliminated the enemy contingent. Nice, in that case, get out of the building through the back. Your job is done.
As she spoke, Shalba raised his hand and gathered energy along his palm. A bright red sphere appeared in the center of a magic circle, which quickly shot forward like a cannonball fired at Mach speed. It struck the building seconds later and annihilated the entire thing in one go. Revel winced when a wave of heat washed over her, but she tried not to shiver at the complete eradication of the structure.
Saji and Tsubasa announced their escape over the intercom. At that moment, Shalba continued gazing at the building that he had destroyed what remained of it. Technically, it was just a big crater now. As he continued staring at it, he clicked his tongue and ordered his forces to move out and find the others.
We've thinned out their numbers a good deal, Revel said as she began moving. Let's regroup and then plan our next strategy. Remember to use the buildings as cover and always keep Shalba and his forces in sight so they can't surprise us. Revel received a chorus of affirmatives over the communication network. Glancing at Shalba and his forces once more, she saw that he was moving in the opposite direction as her, and so she took off. Leaving the building, her wings of fire flapped as she darted to the next building over. With her back pressed against the wall, she glanced up and saw that Shalba was still looking away. She was just about to move again when a shiver passed through her body. Seconds later, a fiery blaze erupted from above her. Revel looked up to find an inferno bearing down on her. Eyes widening in shock, Revel flapped her wings of fire and dodged to the left. The inferno slammed into the building, detonating with an incredible amount of force, so much that Revel was pushed back as she spun out of control. It was only thanks to her training with Kaneko that she managed to land on her feet. I didn't expect you to dodge that, a terrifyingly familiar voice said. You were never really the kind of person who fought on the front lines. It seems you've improved, Revel. Revel was deathly afraid of look at the voice coming from above, but because she knew she had no choice, she looked up, craning her neck to find a man floating on wings of fire as he stared down at her. The face looking at her was as familiar to her as her own. His blonde hair and blue eyes had a similar hue to hers as well. He no longer wore his burgundy blazer, but had traded the outfit in for an all-black suit with numerous Velcro straps. With flames all around him, the ends of his jacket, which trailed all the way to his feet, flapped in a breeze created from heat.
Riser, Oni-sama. Revel's heart thundered in her chest. It felt like something had grabbed her heart and squeezed it. Her breathing became stilted as she tried to deny what her eyes were telling her. She didn't want to believe it, that Riser was here, because that could only mean one thing. Hello, Revel. Riser Phoenix smiled at her, but it wasn't the smile she remembered from so long ago, that lazy and arrogant but still kind smile. This one was filled with malice and hatred. It's been so long since you and Riser last saw each other. Why don't you come up here and give your big brother a hug? It meant that Riser had sided with the enemy, Devil Ninja. Valley was in the lead as they raced down a set of stairs that went in a spiral. Issei felt like they were in the middle of a dungeon level in a video game, traveling toward the last boss they needed to defeat to beat the whole thing. The sound of their footsteps echoed back to them as they moved. How long do these stairs go on? Asked Issei. Because he was a devil and in great physical shape, the stairs didn't actually make him tired, but they were getting annoying. It felt like they had been traveling down these stairs for hours.
It shouldn't be much longer, I think. Valley grimaced as he hopped down the stairs 3 at a time. My grandfather designed these stairs to seem never-ending in order to annoy people coming and going. There's actually a trick to this. When someone gets upset from going down the stairs, the magic of the stairs will deactivate and let us pass through.
What an awful fucking magic, Rainier grimaced. Your grandpa is an ass. I am already aware of that. So, one of us has to get annoyed for the magic to activate? Asia asked. I am not even sure how magic like that would work, LeFay mumbled. Yeah, but don't worry. I can already see that one of you is close to blowing up, Valley said. Asia looked like she wanted to ask about who was going to blow their top first, but then Rainier let out a shrill scream. Damn it. Fuck. This is so stupid. I hate these fucking stairs and that asshat devil scum. And there we go, Valley said. At the exact same moment that Rainier began cursing like a drunk sailor, the stairs beneath their feet suddenly disappeared. However, the drop down wasn't very far. Barely a second passed before they hit the ground. Sadly, Asia, who was pretty clumsy sometimes, landed the wrong way and fell backwards on her butt. Ow, that really hurt. She rubbed her sore backside. You okay? Issei asked as he extended a hand. Yeah, I'm okay. With a smile, Asia reached out and allowed Issei to pull her up. So, where to now? Asked LeFay as she looked at her leader. The only way we can go. Valley shrugged, through that door. He walked over to a door and opened it, entering without hesitation. While LeFay quickly followed, Issei, Asia, and Rainier glanced at each other. I guess we have no choice. Let's follow him, Issei said with a shrug. I'm right behind you, Asia said. I hate this so much, Rainier complained. However, she still followed Asia and Issei as they went through the door. The hallway they found themselves in didn't extend very far. As he glanced at the stone walls, floor, and ceiling, a shiver went down Issei's spine, though he tried to ignore it and follow Valley. On either side were several doors made of steel. They were covered in rust and looked old, but part of Issei felt like this was just an aesthetic Rizavum had tried to create for psychological purposes. As they got closer to the door, an intense feeling of dread welled up inside of Issei, like a black hole had formed in his stomach and was swallowing everything whole. You feel that? Asked Valley. I do, Issei allowed. What is it? I'm not sure, but I have a bad feeling we're not going to like what we find on the other side. Issei didn't really understand what Valley meant at first, but then Valley reached for the door, which he opened wide, and they stepped inside. The room was large. Issei couldn't say how large, but it at least looked like it was the size of a track field, which made him think they were in another dimension like when they played raiding games. Like the rest of this dungeon, everything was made of stone. In the very center of this dungeon were several people and something bizarre. The bizarre thing that had attracted Issei's attention was an enormous and ominous-looking creature with the upper body of a fallen angel and the lower body of an Asian dragon. Its arms, tail, and wings were all nailed to a large cross, eyes covered with a bloodfold that had blood dripping from beneath it. Issei took one glance at its mouth, then grimaced when he saw the massive fangs jutting from its lips. A long and vile black tentacle was growing from its mouth. 3 other people were standing close to this creature. 2 of them were right next to the monster Rizavam and Kuno. Rizavam had a firm grip on Kuno, who had tears in her eyes as she stared at them. Meanwhile, Rizavam was grinning as he saw them come in.
The last person present was none other than Ophis, who was glaring at Rizavam with more emotion than Issei had ever seen in the normally emotionless girl. No, wait. That wasn't quite right. She displayed emotion when she was with Naruto, but he'd never seen such an intense look of hatred on her face.
Issei noticed they were missing someone. Namely, that girl named Lilith wasn't present. He'd been sure she had been a part of this plot too. Or was she not there because she had already served her purpose? So that's Samael, Valley murmured. He's pretty ugly. Why did you 2 come here? Ophis demanded, looking at them. Because we obviously couldn't leave you. Valley shrugged. If we didn't come here to rescue you, Rizavam would just steal your power without anyone who could put up a fight. You shouldn't have tried to rescue me, Ophis said morosely. Hey now. How can you say that to people who have come all the way here to save you? Valley said with a laugh before his eyes narrowed. In either event, it looks like we literally made it seconds before that thing devoured you. HMPH. Rizavam snorted as he pulled Kuno closer and kept his hand over her mouth. The girl tried to say something, but her words were muffled. You say that like you arrived in time, but the truth is that I have been waiting for you to arrive. Rizavam grinned. I want to watch you fuckers struggle and fight against me. I want to watch the hopelessness appear in your eyes as you realize how futile it is. Then I want you to despair when I kill the people you care about in front of you. I waited so I could amuse myself. Had I wanted to, I could have already stolen Ophis's power. Issei gnashed his teeth together. This guy's words were pissing him off so much right now. He wanted to rush over and deck this man in the face so hard his nose caved in, but he knew that doing so would not be the best idea since he didn't know how strong Rizavam was, never mind Samael. First things first, we need to get Kuno back, Issei said as he thought about the situation. She's the reason Ophis can't do anything. Once we get her away from Rizavam, Ophis can just blow him away. That's easier said than done, Valley muttered. Lefei, you got any nifty magic we can use? I wish you wouldn't call my magic nifty, as if it was the wand waving of some stage magician. Lei Fei sighed, but her nose scrunched up in thought as she considered their positions. I do have one spell that could work, but it takes time to set up. If you can distract him for a bit, I can use replacement magic to replace one of you with Kuno.
Let's go with that, Issei decided as he stepped forward and quickly entered his balance breaker. Scale mail covered his body and he quickly began boosting himself without limit. As he did, he pointed at Rizavam. Hey, asshat. I hope you don't mind, but since my sensei isn't here to do it, I'm gonna have to deck you one in the face for him. Is that so? Rizavam looked more amused than angry or desperate.
I would like to see you try. Just remember, this child's life is in the palm of my hand. One wrong and my hands might slip. Wouldn't it just be awful if her neck were suddenly broken? Why, I imagine Naruto would be quite distraught. KK. That's actually a pretty nice thought. Once I'm done with you people, I should see if Naruto is still around. If he is, I'd love to snap this girl's neck in front of him and watch the agony in his eyes as her life drains away. Rizavam was pontificating. He seemed to do that a lot. Issei was sure the man loved listening to himself talk about all the horrible things he would do to people. It seemed like talking too much was a bad guy modus operandi, something all villains did because they were villains. In either event, during that time, Lefei completed her magic circle. 2 magic circles appeared, one underneath Kuno and one underneath Valley, and then Valley and Kuno had suddenly traded places. Before Rizavam had time to recover, Valley's body exploded with power as white armor covered his entire figure. Now wearing his balance breaker, Valley threw a punch so powerful the very air detonated with intense winds. However, despite the power in his attack, Rizavam had not moved an inch, and Issei soon realized with no small amount of shock that the old Satan faction leader had caught Valley's hand. Oh ho! That was a well-executed plan. As expected of my grandson. You might have human blood in you, but you're quite ballsy. The grin on Rizavam's face grew. However, good as this plan was, it was also stupid. You took your eyes off the prize and now you're too late to do anything about it. Issei didn't understand what Rizavam meant, but then an odd sound echoed around the room as a black object shot out from Samael. It was the tentacle sticking out of its mouth, The tentacle shot toward Ophis and opened up like a gaping maw, then flew down and swallowed her whole. All of this happened barely a second after Kuno was saved. There hadn't even been time to warn her.
Ha 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 ha. Rizevim's uproarious laughter echoed around them. He threw Valley away from him and spread his arms wide. Yes. Devour her, Samael. Steal all of Ophis's power and give it to me.
As the situation quickly grew out of hand, Issei could only grimace as he realized they were all in way over their heads. Chapter 46 Escape and Tragedy. Naruto frowned as he gazed at Yami in the distance. The world around them was an endless void mixed with iridescent colors that swirled and clashed. In some ways, it reminded him of the swirling nebula of stars he used to look at when he was a kid in Konoha. In other ways, it felt a lot like looking through a kaleidoscope. As the surroundings blurred and meshed together, he felt a vague and fuzzy memory pierce the back of his mind. He knew this place. "Do you remember this place?" asked Yami as he gestured to the unique space they were floating in. "This is the dimensional gap, the void between worlds. During our battle with Kagaya Otsutsuki, we traveled through this space, which tore apart our body, ravaged us from the inside out, and left you crippled. I was split off from you in that moment and wandered through this endless void of nothing, until one day when I felt power flow into me again. It was the first time I used Sage Mode," Naruto said at last. Yami gave him a malicious smile. "That's right. The first time you used Sage Mode was the first time I felt power flow into me. Along with the hatred and rage of an entire world. The more you used Sage Mode, the more powerful I became, and the more hatred I took in." Vicious red irises surrounded by black sclera glared into Naruto's eyes. "These intense feelings of loathing surging through me are all your fault, you know." "I know." Naruto neither ran nor hid from this fact. He accepted that this entire situation was his fault. "But that's all the more reason I have to be the one who stops you. I'll take responsibility for what happened with my own two hands."
"Take responsibility." Yami threw his head back and laughed. "If you have the means to take responsibility for your shortcomings, then by all means, do so." However, the laughter died down as Yami's vicious expression of mirth became cold and malevolent. "You should not say something like that so lightly. I'm stronger than you. I have more power than you. You cannot take responsibility for what happened to us. If you really want to repent for what happened, then you can die." Yami rushed forward as he made a cross-shaped hand seal. Several Yamis suddenly appeared next to him. 3. And they all branched off into groups of 2. 2 of the Yamis stuck out their hands and created a Rasengan. Then the other 2 channeled wind chakra into the pair of Rasengans. Before long, a loud ringing sound filled the void as the Rasengans turned pure white with 4 spinning blades twirling around them. Naruto did not create a Rasen Shuriken to counter Yami's 2-pronged attack. He began a series of hand seals. At the same time, a magic circle appeared in front of him. The magic circle rotated clockwise, then released a powerful burst of fire magic just as he finished his hand seals. Futen. Repusho Wind Release. Gale Palm. Naruto clasped his hands together, compressing the wind and transforming it into a powerful gale force, which slammed into the fire created by his magic circle. He pumped more chakra into the technique than was necessary. When it hit the burst of fire, the blaze exploded as though someone had tossed gasoline into it. An enormous cylinder of flame barreled toward the 4 Yamis. They moved out of the way, but Naruto created several magic circles along the path the cylinder was taking. The cylinder of fire suddenly curved and slammed into 2 of the Yami clones. Such a weak attack might not have been enough to do any damage to the real Yami. But clones were still just weak creations that became disrupted from a single punch. Both of them dispersed as the cylinder swept over them. "I see you can use more than just chakra," Yami roared as the clone beside him dispersed of its own accord. Naruto sent his dark half a small smile. "Roswise has been teaching me a bit more about magic. She thought it would be good if I had more techniques up my sleeve that you can't use. TCH. You aren't the only one who has learned a thing or two." Yami thrust his Rasenshuriken forward, but Naruto had no intention of letting that thing hit him. He backed away, or he would have. Naruto was startled when he ran into something behind him. Turning his head, he saw a very basic shield made of magic behind him, keeping him from moving forward. There was also one beneath him and on his left and right, meaning he was literally hemmed in. "I also learned some magic. I knew the day would come when you and me fought like this,"
now you have nowhere to run. It was true that it looked like his escape routes were blocked off. There also wasn't anything he could use to replace himself with, so the Kawarimi no Jutsu was out. However, that didn't mean Naruto was not without his options. After all, Naruto had Roswise on his side, and she was perhaps the greatest magic user he'd ever met. Thanks to her, he actually knew a lot about magic, magic circles, and how to counter them. With the knowledge he acquired from Roswise, Naruto analyzed the magic blocking his escape route. It was protection magic. The wall put in place was normally one that protected the creator from physical attacks, but Yami was using it to restrain him instead. It wasn't devil magic either, which relied on imagination. This was the magic circle used by magicians, which were dependent upon complex formulas. Once he figured out what kind of magic it was, creating a counter magic was relatively simple. The wall dissolved just as Yami reached Naruto and thrust out his hand. Naruto glided backward, out of Yami's reach, and then erected his own shield, which Yami slammed into. Of course, Yami had that Rasen Shuriken in his hand, and no barrier would ever be able to counter such a jutsu. The Rasen Shuriken drilled into the wall with a shrill screech and tore it apart like paper. It took a second, however, and Naruto used that second to withdraw to a safe distance. Yami glared viciously at him as he dispersed the Rasen Shuriken, which was now useless to him. It seems you really have learned a lot of new tricks.
Naruto grinned and shrugged. As the #1 most unpredictable ninja of Kuo Academy, I have a reputation to keep. I can't have some dark half-upstart of me stealing my thunder. He chuckled and slammed his fists together. You might be stronger than I am, but that doesn't mean I'm not without my tricks.
It was true that in a straight-up battle, Yami would win in terms of sheer power. During their last bout, Naruto had been so shocked that he hadn't been able to come up with a proper strategy for dealing with his other half, but he'd spoken with Rias, Revel, and Roswise at length, and the three beauties, who were far smarter than him, helped him devise a plan. It didn't matter how powerful Yami was if he couldn't hit Naruto with his overbearing ninjutsu attacks. Trickery and deceit would be his greatest allies here. However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, Yami suddenly sent him a cold smile. Naruto felt a chill run down his spine before something grabbed his arms and legs. He blinked, then turned his head and found 4 Yami clones standing behind him, keeping his limbs pinned. When did Yami have time to make them? You aren't the only one who has been working on refining his abilities, Yami said with an ominous chuckle. I might not be as well versed in magic as you, but I have learned how to create shadow clones without using hand seals. It looks like this is a skill you don't have.
Naruto clicked his tongue as he realized he wasn't the only one who had created new tricks. Yami had his own bag of tricks that Naruto was unaware of. It seemed like, despite how they were both the same person, the abilities they possessed were not all the same now. The different circumstances they faced upon coming to this world led them to learning different abilities. This was troublesome. Now, let's see you dodge me again. Yami tossed him a dark grin as he created a wind Rasengan in his hand and lunged forward.
Naruto only had a split second to think, but in that split second, he came up with a plan, closed his eyes, and surged both his chakra and demonic power. He wrapped it around himself and one of the clones, quickly replacing himself with the Yami clone. Yami's eyes widened as he slammed into the clone, which exploded upon contact with his wind Rasengan. The other clones were blasted apart as well. However, Naruto once again managed to escape. To add injury to insult, Naruto suddenly jerked his hands, which caused a long twine of ninja wire to suddenly coil around Yami, tightening to the point where he couldn't move his limbs. Before Yami could use his strength to break free, Naruto once again combined fire magic with wind ninjutsu.
A massive blaze raced along the twines of ninja wire in his hand. This fire was not the traditional orange of most flames, but a burning hot blue flame with traces of white. The ninja wire in Naruto's hand quickly melted as the attack flew along it, morphing from a simple flame into 8 brilliant blue nine-tailed foxes. Before Yami had a chance to scream, the foxes slammed into him and detonated, exploding with an incredible force that sent Naruto hurtling backwards through the dimensional gap. A shockwave rippled out from where the attacks met, with gouts of flame exploding in every direction. It looked a lot like the birth of a new star. Naruto stared at the miniature Nova and huffed. I wonder if that got him. A snort appeared in his mind. Not even close. Yami is still very much alive. In fact, that attack didn't even do any damage to him. As if to prove Kurama's point, the fire dispersed as if an intense wind had blown it all away, and Yami appeared in its place. His body was surrounded by an intense aura. Dark blackish-purple chakra exuded from his body like a thick miasma, protecting him from the harmful flames. Naruto clicked his tongue when he noticed there wasn't a single hair out of place on Yami's head.
However, he did smile when he saw the dark expression on his counterpart's face. You really are a troublesome foe to deal with. Even now, when faced against a mirror image of yourself, you still come up with surprising tactics. That's because I'm just that awesome. Naruto swiped his nose with his thumb as he thrust out his chest. I am so amazing that sometimes I even amaze myself with my own ingenuity. Snorting laughter echoed within his mind. Naruto wore a broad grin as he listened to Kurama's rumbling chuckles. On the other hand, Yami looked like he had swallowed a lemon whole. I've always hated that pride of yours, Yami admitted. Your refusal to give up when faced with impossible odds is more infuriating than anything else.
It was that stubborn refusal to give up that caused me to feel a moment of weakness back when you fought me at the Falls of Truth. When you told me I should just join you because you and I were one, I truly believed you could do anything. I thought for sure you could change the world. But I was wrong. This world is nothing but a big ball of hatred and malice. No one can change it. All we can do accept it, embrace it, and use it as fuel to further our own desires and goals.
As he spoke, Yami raised his hands and clenched them into fists. There was a contemplative expression on his face, eyes narrowed slightly, brow furrowed as if he was thinking about everything he'd been through up to this point. Naruto thought about interrupting and attacking, but he was honestly curious to know what his other half was thinking. He remained silent as Yami came out of his thoughts. If you think you have what it takes to defeat me, then bring it on. Unlike last time, simply telling me that everything will be okay isn't going to cut it. If you want to truly change my way of thinking, then you should do so with your fists. That was exactly what I intended on doing, Naruto said as he slammed his fists together. Kurama, remember, you can only maintain this state for a little while. Thanks to your slight increase in power, I'd say you can maintain this state for 10 minutes now. Hopefully, 10 minutes will be all I need. A moment of silence passed before Kurama's infinite and overwhelming chakra rushed through his body with an explosive force that shook his insides. It felt like fire burning his body from the inside out. Chakra exploded from him, erupting through his pores in an overbearing and intensely painful manner. However, Naruto bore through it. Gritting his teeth as a shroud appeared around him, as his pupils became slits, as his whiskers thickened to resemble the Bagua trigram. His transformation only finished when the shroud took on the appearance of a Haori. Because of how vast Kurama's chakra was now, the colors swirling within the void began distorting. They writhed and jerked as though shying away from this intense power. Ripples spread across the dimensional gap. Naruto pushed his chakra a step further. Lines appeared on his Haori and clothes, Uzumaki swirl designs appeared along his back and front, while 10 Magatama formed around his neck as 10 truth-seeking balls appeared around his body. HMPH, Yami snorted as a black cloak wrapped around him. White markings covered his shoulders and white Magatama hung around his neck. 9 black orbs condensed around his body, floating around him like satellites. His hair turned into 2 wisps that resembled fox ears, and his pupils had turned into bars. It looks like despite all the new tricks you have, you still have to rely on his Kurama mode and Rikudo Sennin mode to contend with me. However, you were defeated last time you used this power. What makes you think you'll win this time? Who knows? Naruto shrugged and smiled. Maybe I'll lose. Maybe I won't. Weren't you the one who said we should let our fists do the talking? Why don't you just shut up and fight me? Yami's lips peeled back in a snarl. Fine then, let's do this. Naruto and Yami rushed forward at the same time and clashed in the center. A shockwave exploded from their bodies as they slammed their fists together, erupting and sending ripples through the dimensional gap. They were pushed back. Yami was the first one to stabilize himself, and he quickly darted forward again and tried to attack Naruto with a Rasengan. When Naruto saw this, he narrowed his eyes. Instead of meeting the Rasengan with another Rasengan, one of his truth-seeking balls darted forward, transformed into a jagged sword, and tried to slice through the Rasengan. It was intercepted by one of Yami's truth-seeking balls. 2 of the black balls appeared in Naruto's hands and transformed into a pair of short staffs. As Yami thrust the Rasengan in his hand forward, Naruto slammed the tip of one staff into it. An intense detonation pushed them back. However, that wasn't the end of Yami's attack, as 6 of the 9 truth-seeking balls swirling around him darted forward and tried to punch a hole through Naruto's body. They were intercepted by 6 truth-seeking balls from Naruto. Explosion after explosion erupted between the two as they bitterly fought against each other, creating shockwaves that caused the very atmosphere around them to distort. Tears began appearing within the dimensional gap. These tears did not look like much at first, but when they formed, strange worlds appeared within them. Worlds that looked like Earth, worlds of fire, worlds of water, and worlds made of verdant forests surfaced briefly before disappearing. It was like their powerful clash was tearing apart the boundaries between worlds. Thanks to the orgy Naruto had with Kaneko, Revel, Rias, and Roswise, he was a bit more powerful than before. Of course, the majority of his chakra was still with Yami, but that little bit of chakra allowed Naruto to fight with Yami on even ground for a longer period of time. He knew, however, that 5 extra minutes was not much time in the grand scheme of things.
Naruto realized that if he wanted to win, he would have to come up with something brilliant.
Damn that Kurama. Yami scowled as he glared at Naruto. The only reason you can even keep up with me is because of that blasted fox in your gut. I rather resent being called a blasted fox by a being who isn't even half a man, Kurama grumbled. So, the only reason you can keep up with me is because you have most of my chakra? Naruto shrugged. Personally, I don't think you have any room to bitch and moan like some pathetic grade schooler. Stop complaining and let me kick your ass. Yami snarled as he surged forward. It looked like he was intending to rip Naruto apart with his bare hands. Just before Naruto's dark half could attack, however, a massive object suddenly flew between them. Naruto gawked when giant red scales appeared in his vision. He glanced at the 4 massive wings spreading from this gigantic creature's back. Each one was about 20 times larger than Naruto himself. No, maybe they were even 50 times larger. Segmented scales like armor plating ran along this monstrosity's back, all the way to its incredibly long tail. It had white scales on the underside of its body. 2 powerful hind legs and shorter but no less impressive front arms gave this massive creature a western dragon appearance. A single blood-red horn jutted from the front of its head. Naruto knew what this creature was. Great Red. The Apocalypse Dragon, the true Red Dragon God Emperor, the Dragon of Dragons, and the person Ophis wanted to kick out of her home. I wish her luck in trying to kick this thing out. Kurama snorted. Even I wouldn't mess with this creature if I didn't have to. Agreed. Naruto was not sure what to expect when he finally met with Great Red, but the dragon before him blew pretty much every expectation out of the water. Not only was this creature gigantic, but the power fluctuations pouring off it was enough that Naruto realized even Kurama might have trouble contending with it. Of course, Kurama also had an infinite supply of chakra, but that just meant the battle between them would be truly epic if they were to fight. As the great dragon soared past them, it performed a pretty slick aerial maneuver and turned back around again to confront them. The fuck is going on here? You punks battling in my backyard without my fucking permission? Huh? The dragon roared. It sounded a lot like a delinquent belonging to a biker gang. Oh, boy. Naruto could feel the sweat trickling down his scalp. Who would have guessed the most powerful creature in this world would be a delinquent? Naruto wasn't sure what to say, so he glanced at Yami, though doing so might have been a mistake. The gobsmacked expression on his counterpart's face almost caused him to snicker. That wouldn't have been good. However, it also gave Naruto some valuable information. Yami clearly knew who this great being was and didn't want to contend with him. Well? The dragon roared again. You punks got anything to say for yourselves? Do ya? I actually do have something to say. Naruto raised his hand, causing Great Red to turn his eyes on him. With a foxy grin, he looked at the massive dragon and gave him a thumbs up. That was a pretty slick move you did just then. It was a split S, right? Oh ho. Great Red suddenly seemed a bit more interested in Naruto. He came closer to him with a mighty flap of his wings. It seems you know a bit about aerial maneuvers. Not bad. It's good to know there are people out there who can appreciate my mad skills. Definitely, it's gotta be hard doing such a crazy move when you're so big. Naruto nodded his head and studiously ignored the angry and savage look on Yami's face as he conversed with Great Red. The amount of strength you have to use must be intense. I imagine just getting lift would be hard, but you do it effortlessly. Ha ha. That is because I'm Great Red. Any other half-bit dragon would never be able to do the crazy stunts I do. And thus, Naruto began talking about aerial maneuvers with the most powerful dragon in existence, while Yami was forced to stand on the sidelines with an expression that made it look like someone had shoved a dead skunk up his ass. As the minutes passed, that expression grew increasingly fierce. So what exactly are you doing here? Asked Naruto after a few minutes of casual conversation.
HMPH. I sensed a really powerful aura creating spatial cracks in the dimensional gap. Of course I came over to see what the fuck was going on. And what do I find but a couple of mirrors beating the crap out of each other. You two have some guts to start fighting in my backyard. I oughta kick your asses from here to the underworld for mucking up my place.
I do apologize for that. Naruto rubbed the back of his head as if he was embarrassed. You see, that guy over there pulled me into the dimensional gap against my will and picked a fight with me. Can you believe it? This dude is a complete asshat. What kind of guy drags someone into another person's home to fight? It's completely disrespectful. At Naruto's words, Great Red turned to look at Yami with a glare so vicious even Naruto's dark half paled. He sent his fellow blonde the most spiteful look he could muster under the circumstance. Naruto, however, tossed him the smuggest, most brilliantly evil smile in the entire world. He felt like one of those supervillains in an anime when they successfully pulled off their plans and finally beat the main protagonist. Is that how it is? Great Red snorted, which released a powerful gust of wind that knocked Yami back. You got some nerve, punk. I'm gonna teach you a fucking lesson. Yami opened his mouth, perhaps to try and dispute Naruto's claim, but Great Red wasn't even willing to listen. Get lost, punk. And then, Great Red flicked Yami with a single finger. It was just one finger, however, an explosive force erupted from the finger when it struck Yami, who flew backward so fast he completely disappeared into the distance at supersonic speeds. Naruto watched as Yami vanished, but then he turned back to Great Red as the massive dragon flipped around to look at him again. I sense an incredible amount of power coming from inside of you, Great Red said at last. Naruto smiled as he dismissed Kurama's chakra shroud and his Rikudo Sennin mode. What you sense isn't my power. My friend is currently sealed inside of me, it's his power you're sensing. Great Red's neck muscles rippled as he nodded. That's what I thought. The power is inside of you but separate from you. HMPH. It's quite powerful. Even I wouldn't want to mess with that power unless I had to. That's the only reason I haven't flicked your ass out of here too. I figured as much. Naruto shrugged. Actually, I'd like to get back to my friends in the underworld, but I can't open a gate. That man I was fighting pulled me in here against my will. Great Red was silent for a moment, but then he nodded his massive head. I'll open a gate back to where you were originally. It's not too hard for someone as awesome as myself. Hang on just a moment. The massive dragon raised one of its comparatively stubby arms and extended a single claw, which tapped the empty space in front of it. Swirls of color spread outward in a ripple before a black tear opened in the center. As the tear solidified, Naruto found that what appeared on the other side was the city of Lucifod. He could see the outside of the city, including the explosions as members of Sona's peerage fought against the old Satan faction. However, what really shocked him was when he noticed Revel fighting what appeared to be her older brother. There. I've opened the gate, now get out of here. Will do. Thanks, Great Red. Keep pulling those crazy awesome stunts. HMPH. You know I will. With a quick salute to the giant red dragon, Naruto flew head first into the tear, which closed up behind him. Devil Ninja. Revel shook as Riser smiled at her. Her pupils dilated as the man floated before her on wings of fire. That dark gaze was enough to completely unsettle her. It seems you have been giving the old Satan faction a lot of trouble. The expression on Riser's face grew increasingly dark. You always were a brilliant strategist. Those strategies of yours have helped Riser any number of times during a raiding game. It is most infuriating to have those same tactics used against Riser now. It didn't take a genius to figure out what Riser's words meant. You've joined the Chaos Brigade, Revel choked out. Why? It should be obvious. The already dark expression became even more dense and volatile. Even his flame-like wings began surging as though expressing their master's rage. Riser was completely humiliated during his raiding game with Rias Gremory. Some no-name little shit not only dared to stand up to him, but he even beat the snot out of him. As if that was not enough, that bastard became hailed as one of the strongest young devils in the underworld, snatched Rias away from Riser, and even sunk his claws into Riser's own little sister. This is an affront. Our parents might have allowed and even encouraged this, but Riser will not stand for it. Revell felt hot tears prick her eyes as she listened to Riser speak. Riser had always been a prideful man. When they were younger, he would often boast to others and pick fights to prove his superiority. Whenever someone said something bad about him, he would use this Phoenix name and his strength as a member of their clan to thoroughly humiliate that person. His pride was something that she'd always found a little annoying, to be honest, but Riser had also always treated her well. "And now, what are you planning to do?" asked Revell. "That should be obvious." Riser lost the dark look and replaced it with a smile, though that only made Revell even more fearful of him. "Riser cannot allow you to just do as you please. Therefore, he will capture you and bring you back to our base. Do not worry, you will not be harmed." Revell took a step back and shook her head. "I'm not going." The darkness in Riser's eyes returned. "Do not do anything foolish, Revell. You are no match for Riser. You never were." Revell gritted her teeth as she listened to and acknowledged his words. As an immature Phoenix, Revell did not have the power her brother did, but that also didn't mean she could give up. If nothing else, she needed to at least try and stall for time. That said, she didn't know what sort of miracle she was expecting. "I'm not abandoning my friends," she said adamantly. "You mean you are not abandoning that bastard who defeated Riser?" He flew forward as Revell flew back. "Fine. This will be unpleasant for both of us, but if you will not listen to reason, then Riser will just force you to come with him." It happened in an instant. Riser appeared in front of Revell. Flames ignited from his hands, an intense burning orange that looked molten, like it might melt the entire world into slag. He threw those fists at Revell, who only had a moment to react. Revell had expected this. She knew Riser well. The wings on Revell's back disappeared as she dropped, allowing the intense flame-coated fists to flash over her head. A magic circle appeared in her left hand as she swiped it at Riser. Flames burst from it and slammed into his face. It didn't do any damage, but it did blind him for a moment. Revell's wings appeared again as she flew away quickly, darting through several buildings, doing everything she possibly could to get away from her older brother. She understood her own strengths and weaknesses very well. At present, she could not defeat her brother, who seemed even more powerful now than he had been back then. "That wasn't very nice, Revell," a voice said above her. Revell gasped when she turned her head and saw Riser descending from the sky. She barrel rolled out of the way, which caused him to soar past her, but he quickly recovered with a flap of his wings. More flames appeared in his hand, which he threw at her. Revell could do little more than grit her teeth as she created a barrier in front of her body. Flames blasted against her shield, which shattered under Riser's intense assault, sending her spiraling out of control through the air. Revell was able to regain her flight, however. She flapped her wings and descended quickly, then ignited her Phoenix powers over fire and struck the ground. A massive explosion went up behind her. She used the intense pillar of flames to mask her movement as she darted behind a building. "You might be incredibly smart, dear sister, but Riser can see through your every move." At the sound of her brother's voice, Revell looked up to see that Riser had not been tricked by her maneuver at all. He was floating above her. Tricks like that might work on someone who doesn't know you as well as Riser does. However, to someone who has watched you since you were little, those cheap parlor tricks will never work. It had been a long time since Revell felt this frustrated. Riser was countering her every move. Just like she knew what he would do. He knew what she would do, and he was using his knowledge of her to his advantage. Thinking about it like this, Revell realized none of her usual plans would work against someone like Riser, who knew her so well. In that case, she needed to do something that Revell Phoenix would not do. She needed to do something reckless and stupid. Yes, she needed to do something that Naruto would do. "All right," Revell muttered as flames ignited on her hands. "Let's try this." "Are you planning to fight Riser head-on?" asked Riser, looking a little perplexed. "Little sister, Riser applauds your courage, but you have to know fighting like this is pointless. You cannot win." "We'll see about that," Revell said in a surprisingly loud voice. Ravel rushed at Riser with a straightforward assault. It was something so idiotic, so moronic, that Ravel would never do this. Or so Riser thought. From the shocked expression on his face, it seemed she had really left him stunned. She closed the distance before he could recover and used what little she learned of combat from Kaneko to sock Riser right in the face. Her straight jab was simple and lacked the power of the little rook. However, she had released an incredibly well-timed explosion of fire, which further fueled her punch's destructive power. The attack was enough to knock Riser back. "How dare you hit Riser?" With a roar, Riser Phoenix charged at her, completely forgetting himself as he unleashed a vicious assault that even she did not expect. Perhaps it was simply because Riser was already unhinged. However, his attack was merciless. Something powerful slammed into Ravel's body. She didn't know what it was, but it struck her chest and caused her to gasp in agony as her body was sent soaring backward through the air. Before she could even recover, Riser appeared behind her. He lashed out with an explosive kick that would have broken her spine, but Ravel unleashed a timely burst of fire that changed her orientation. She was able to dodge the attack by a hair. She could not dodge the fire-covered fist. Ravel spat out bile as she flew through the air, struck the ground, and tumbled. Her body jarred from the numerous impacts. She would have screamed when her shoulder was torn from its socket, but her voice was lost to the wind. A yelp escaped her mouth when something sharp cut open her leg. It couldn't be heard over the blood pounding into her ears. Eventually coming to a stop on the ground, Ravel needed a moment to pick up her bruised and battered body. Her wounds were healing as she tried to stand. She might have succeeded, but then Riser appeared in front of her. He grabbed her by the head and slammed his knee into her nose. Ravel cried out as she was sent rocketing backward. She landed on the ground in a dazed heap as he walked over to her with cold, meticulous steps. Riser did not want to do this, Ravel, but you have forced his hand. Riser stopped in front of Ravel and reached out to grab her. Now, it is time for you to come with. No more words came out of Riser's mouth. At that moment, Riser suddenly found himself being relieved of his hand. He stared at the now missing stump for a moment, which was all the time he was allowed, before a foot slammed into his face so hard he rocketed off the ground and crashed into a large building. Ravel cracked her eyes open as she saw a tall and broad-shouldered figure standing in front of her. She coughed once as blood stained her lips. Her wounds were healing rapidly, but they were still a little slower than Riser's own regenerative abilities. Naruto, I'm sorry for arriving late, Naruto said, though he did not turn his eyes back to her. His gaze was locked onto the destroyed building Riser had plowed through. I was only just able to return from the dimensional gap. Please forgive me, because of me. It's okay. Ravel took a deep breath as she stood up. I'm already feeling better. Do not worry about me. Naruto didn't say anything, but that was likely because Riser emerged from the building at that moment. He had a furious and insane look in his eyes as he stared at Naruto. You bastard, I should have known you would try to interfere in my business. You're damn right I would, Naruto said as he shifted his feet against the ground. You're hurting one of the women I love. You should have seen this coming from a kilometer away. While Ravel felt her cheeks become hot when Naruto said he loved her, she knew now wasn't the time. She moved to stand beside Naruto. The man she had given herself to was glaring at Riser with a look of such intense loathing that even she was taken aback. Riser looked like he was about to have a conniption. Yet just before he could rush over and try to kill them, Shalba Beelzebub appeared. He looked at Naruto and Ravel, then turned his gaze to Riser. We're leaving, Riser. It is time to pull out. What? I can't. I have to get back at that bastard and take Ravel with us. Riser said, looking aghast. Rizavam has already accomplished his goal. It is likely he will be leaving soon as well. We are leaving. Riser looked like he wanted to argue, but then Shalba glared at him and he shut his mouth. He took a deep breath. Then he threw a malicious glare at Ravel and Naruto. While she was shocked to the core by his look, Naruto was relatively impassive, though she could see the way his hands were twitching. I will remember this. Riser spat before he and Shalba disappeared within a magic circle. It looked like they had teleportation magic. Naruto waited until he was sure the two were gone before turning to Ravel. Are you okay? He asked. The concern in his eyes warmed her heart. She was about to say she was fine, but then she shook her head. I am not okay, but I know I can't afford to let my emotions get the better of me right now. We still have a job to do. You're right. Naruto smiled at her. That man said Rizavim has accomplished his goal, which means he has likely succeeded in stealing Ophus's power. That means we should hurry, if we don't make it in time to save her. Naruto left his sentence unfinished, but Revel didn't need to know what he meant. She knew. If they failed to save Ophus in time, then they would be in a lot of trouble. Devil Ninja. Dragon Shot. A bright orb of energy appeared in front of Euclid. It was not the traditional color that Rias was used to seeing, but a red and silver mixture. Euclid punched it with his fist, clad in an artificially made sacred gear. The energy orb exploded with an incredible amount of power and raced toward Rias, turning into a beam of energy that threatened to consume them. Scatter, everyone. Knowing better than to remain where they were, the members of Rias's peerage who were fighting against Euclid separated from each other and moved, presenting harder to hit targets. That was the intention at least. Dragon Shot. Their opponent seemed to know how to use the Dragon Shot, one of Issei's signature moves, quite well. He didn't aim at where they were, but where they were going to be. Rias almost found herself being blasted in the face with a beam of intense red and silver energy when it flashed by her head. She stopped just seconds before it could hit her. The beam tore past her nose and continued on, slamming into the wall and drilling a massive hole right through it. At the same time, Rosweiss created a magic circle in front of her. It rotated before unleashing a torrent of holy magic at Euclid. The devil was smart enough to not let himself get struck by her attacks. He moved backward like a ghost as the bright beam of white light slammed into the ground. No damage was done since this attack was one that only damaged people, but Euclid still narrowed his eyes when he saw the attack hit where he'd been standing. "That magic of yours is very dangerous," Euclid said with a growl. "If you think that's dangerous, you should see my angel magic," Irina shouted as she descended from above and swung her light sword. Euclid raised a single hand. A magic circle appeared in front of it just as her weapon slammed into him. The magic circle was obviously a shield of some kind, and it looked like it was specifically meant to protect against holy attacks. It sizzled and hissed. However, the sword of light in Irina's hand did not break through. "Gasper!" Rias shouted. "I am on E." Gasper narrowed his eyes and activated Forbidden Balor View, which he used to quickly freeze the area around Euclid's arm. That was about all he could do. However, it gave Rias enough time to launch her own attack. Dark red energy gathered in front of her. It crackled and hissed before turning from an unwieldy blob into a long spear. The spear itself did not look like anything special. If a weapon maker were to ever lay eyes on it, they probably would have gaped in horror at how unaesthetically appealing it was, but Rias did not care about its looks as she chopped her hand down at Euclid. The dark red spear shot forward faster than a bullet from a gun. Euclid, who had been trying to move his hand without success, suddenly narrowed his eyes when the intense wave of crackling energy neared him. He raised his free hand and created another barrier. He was just in time. Rias's spear slammed into the barrier and detonated. Reddish-black energy howled as it tried to break through the barrier. Despite how much power she put into this attack, the barrier did not shatter. While the barrier didn't break, Euclid now had both hands full and no hands to deal with Rosweiss, who held out her hands and created another magic circle. This one was a lot more complex than any she'd created so far. White light swirled inside of it before exploding outward in a powerful bolt of energy that finally slammed into Euclid's body. The attack sent him hurtling backward, Gasper's power shattering around his hand. However, even with this, the man was able to regain his balance and skidded across on the floor on his feet instead of tumbling like a ragdoll. When he stopped, a hideous look appeared on his face as he gazed at the wound Rosweiss's attack had inflicted. A large hole had been burnt into Euclid's clothing, and Rias could see the burnt flesh underneath it. Oddly enough, the attack didn't seem to have penetrated his flesh. There was a large black mark where the attack hit, but there was no blood. "I guess fighting against four of you at the same time really is too much even for someone like me," he admitted with a frown. He glanced at his sacred gear. "It's just like I thought. This sacred gear can't stand up to the original either. It's just a cheap imitation. In order to make it truly work, I need to use the remains of a boosted gear holder and the souls of powerful dragons. If you know you won't win in a fight against us, then just give up," Rias said as Gasper, Irina, and Rosweiss landed on the ground next to her. "Sorry, but I still have no intention of giving up." Euclid gave them a graceless smile. "That said, I now understand that using a cheap imitation sacred gear that hasn't been truly refined won't work. I guess, in the end, I can only rely on my own power to deal with you four." As he spoke these words, an intense explosion of demonic energy burst from his body. Rias and the others tensed up when they felt this incredible power. The man took a step forward as he glared at them, the floor cracking beneath his feet. "You should know that I'm every bit as strong as my sister," Euclid said as waves of power wafted off his body. "You four might be a lot more powerful than I expected, but I highly doubt you can defeat an ultimate-class devil such as myself." "We'll see about that," Rias said. Despite the overwhelming pressure Euclid was emitting, she wasn't about to give up. They had faced off against several powerful opponents in the past, and while fighting someone as strong as her sister-in-law was certainly a frightening prospect, that didn't mean they would just roll over and die either. While Rias, Rosweiss, Irina, and Gasper were getting ready to renew their battle with a now charged-up Euclid, Arthur, Akano, Kiba, Kaneko, and Xenovia were continuing their battle with Grendel. As a dragon whose defense was one of the most formidable in the entire world, Grendel's body had received very few wounds despite being hit with nearly everything the group had. Only Arthur and Kaneko were able to deal any real damage to it. Arthur was holding a sword in his hand that Rias didn't recognize. However, the formidable aura it unleashed let her know it was a holy sword that might be even more powerful than the original Excalibur. It had a grip long enough to be used as a two-handed weapon with a rounded pommel at the end, and a huge cross-shaped guard. The long blade was mostly silver, but the edge was a brilliant golden color. Before anyone could even blink, Arthur disappeared and appeared again right next to Grendel, slashing his sword down in an overhand stroke. Ripples appeared as the sword descended. It was like he was cutting through space itself. Even Grendel did not dare let himself be hit with such an attack. He dodged backward, though he was not fast enough to completely avoid the strike. A small cut appeared on his skin. However, even though he received an injury, the dangerous dragon still laughed joyously as if he found Arthur's ability to hurt him amusing. It was at this moment that Kaneko darted in behind Grendel, her two tails wagging furiously behind her as a bright glow covered her entire body. Before the evil dragon even had time to notice her presence, she sent several powerful punches into his backside. Each attack left a fist-shaped imprint in Grendel's body. The attacks also lifted the much larger dragon off the ground. Kaneko finished her attack by placing her hands on the ground, lifting her lower body up, and mule-kicking Grendel with a force so powerful he was blasted into the air. "Let's see if you can protect yourself against this," Xenovia suddenly shouted as she and Kiba leapt into the air and descended on Grendel. They slashed at the dragon with their respective swords. However, just like last time, the wounds they left on him were superficial at best. As they landed on the ground, Akano, who was flying above them, unleashed another intense blast of holy lightning that slammed into Grendel and sent him hurtling back to the floor. He slammed into the floor, causing the room to rumble and shake. A massive crater formed in the floor around him while numerous cracks spread from the point of impact. Despite how much damage such an attack should have dealt, Grendel stood back up like nothing had happened. He had a few small cuts, some bruises in the shape of Kaneko's fist, and black singe marks from Akano's lightning. However, the amount of wounds on his body was in no way proportional to the amount of times they had attacked him. "Our attacks are barely doing anything to this monster," Xenovia growled in frustration. "It is pretty disheartening to see our attacks doing so little damage," Kiba agreed as he gripped the sword in his hands more tightly. The five of them had been battling this dragon for the better part of 20 minutes and had only managed to inflict some superficial wounds on its skin. While they had also managed to avoid suffering injuries themselves, the situation still appeared grim. "I would normally just be able to cut through someone like this using Caliburn's ability to cut space, but Grendel is more durable than anyone I've fought before. Perhaps it is his powers as a dragon, but Caliburn cannot fully cut through him like it would someone else," Arthur said. "What should we do?" asked Kaneko. "What else can we do?" Akano shrugged as she floated over to them. Warily eyeing the dragon standing several meters away, "We keep attacking." While that didn't sound like the greatest plan ever conceived, it wasn't like they could do anything else. The group seemed to understand that and thus renewed their attacks. At the same time, Rias found that she was no longer able to focus on her other comrades as Euclid unleashed his own attack at them. A magic circle appeared in front of him before a strange light shot from it. Rias's eyes widened as she felt the intense burst of demonic power emitting from that light. Everyone move. They moved away before the light struck the ground and exploded. The force of the explosion was so intense that Rias, Irina, Gasper, and Roswise were lifted off the ground and sent backward. They struck the floor and rolled. Only after tumbling for several meters did they manage to regain their balance and stand up, though all of them were now sporting several burn marks. Rias could not help but gawk when she saw the crater where they had been standing. It wasn't big, but she could tell from how smooth the ground had become that his powerful explosion magic contained a heat intense enough to melt the floor. If an attack like that hit any of them, they would be destroyed. I guess this is the difference between an ultimate class devil and us, Irina said morosely as she stared at the now calm Euclid. None of you have the power to beat me, Euclid said as if he'd heard her. You might think you have a chance because of our last battle, but the only reason you did so well against me back then was because you had Metatron on your side, and I wasn't fighting against you with all my strength. I just needed to get a measure of your abilities. Now that I know what you are capable of and you have no archangel protecting you, I don't need to hold back. Rias gritted her teeth. She refused to admit defeat, but she also knew that unless she was willing to unleash her new ultimate attack, which she couldn't do within such a confined space because it was an indiscriminate attack, she had nothing that could really destroy someone of Euclid's caliber. It seemed they had greatly underestimated their opponent. Devil Ninja, after rescuing Revel, he and his companion traveled into the underground tunnel and swiftly raced through it, though they had no idea where they were going. How are we going to find Rias and the others? Asked Revel. I'm following their scent. Revel gave him a strange look. What are you, a dog? A fox? When Revel saw the grin on his face, she attempted to roll her eyes at him, but she was smiling at his joke. They soon reached a door that had been blasted open and emerged into a large hallway decorated with gaudy purple carpet. Naruto ran through it with Revel hot on his heels. He wasn't relying on his sense of smell to track Rias, which might have been funny if he could. He was sensing fluctuations of demonic energy. Even at his present location, he could feel the incredible swelling of demonic power from further away. It was not long after they had traveled through several hallways that Naruto and Revel burst into a large room, which resembled an entrance hall similar to the one at the Gremory estate. Two separate battles were taking place there. Naruto turned his head and watched as Kaneko darted between the legs of a giant humanoid dragon. She kicked its legs hard enough that he fell to the ground. When this happened, Arthur, Kiba, and Zenobia rushed forward and attempted to impale it. They weren't successful. The creature blocked Kiba and Zenobia before scrambling away from Arthur. As the dragon got to his feet, Akeno blasted the creature with holy lightning. Once again, the attack didn't seem to do much more than stagger the dragon creature back. That must be Grendel, Revel murmured as she bit her lip. Nodding, Naruto looked from the fight with Grendel to Rias Gremory's fight with Euclid. Roswise and Rias were bombarding him with magic from a distance, while Irina tried to get in and attack close with her light swords. Gasper, in the meantime, was hanging back and using Forbidden Blur View to break up Euclid's rhythm. Even as he watched, Rias sent an incredibly fierce blast of demonic reddish-black energy that slammed into a barrier their opponent created. Roswise also used her Norse magic to blast the devil with lightning. However, both attacks met a barrier before Euclid unleashed a number of bursts of light, which detonated all around the Gremory group and forced them to move. Is this all the great Rias Gremory has to offer? Pathetic? Euclid spat. You're just as pathetic as your naive brother. The look on Rias's face was fierce as she surged forward. Says the man who hasn't killed any of us yet. Don't talk down to me like you're better than the rest of us when you also haven't succeeded in doing anything. Euclid was actually scowling now, but he didn't remain that way for long and created several more bursts of explosion magic. He tried surrounding the group with explosions. However, Rias was not stupid, and she used her powers of destruction to blast a hole in the formation that allowed her and the others to escape. From this distance, Naruto could feel the heat from Euclid's explosion magic, a searing hot wind that burned his face. It was pretty intense, though Naruto thought the black flames of Amaterasu were more powerful. We're missing a few people, Revel announced before looked at Naruto. Issei and several others aren't here. Naruto gazed around and noticed that Issei, Rainier, Asia, Lefei, and Valley were indeed not present. They have probably gone on ahead. Our goal is to rescue Kuno and Ophis, So we can't afford to have all our people tangled up here. Naruto turned to Revel. Come on. I have a feeling I'm going to need your strategies to save Kuno and Office. Revel bit her lip as she looked at the battle between Grendel and the others. More specifically, she looked at Kaneko, who had just dodged one of Grendel's stupidly powerful fists. The punch had created a 2-foot crater in the floor. She returned fire with a Tuki-enhanced kick to the face, but aside from a little blood gushing from the humanoid dragon's nose, the attack didn't do much.
Kaneko will be fine. Naruto placed a hand on Revel's head. You know how powerful she is and how hard she has been training.
I do. Revel took a deep breath before her eyes gained a determined glint. Let's go save Office and Kuno.
While the battle was taking place, Naruto and Revel skirted around the edge of the two battlefields. Euclid saw them and scowled, but he was unable to even try and stop him because Rias had created two brilliant reddish-black swords in her hand and nearly hacked off his arm with one of them. The redhead then flapped her wings and moved back, throwing her sword at him, and while Euclid did knock it aside, he received a face full of lightning from Rosweiss. Naruto and Revel disappeared through the door on the other side. They eventually reached a staircase, which seemed to go down forever, or until Naruto got pissed off and destroyed the stairs. After the stairs were blown to smithereens, they passed through a hall that looked like a classic dungeon from a fantasy game or tabletop D&D. Before long, they reached the end, where an already open door was waiting for them.
What they found on the other side caused them to freeze. It was so bizarre that even Naruto, who almost always had a quip ready, did not quite know what to say. Issei, Lefei, Rainier, and Valley were battling against, well, Naruto wasn't sure what it was. It had the upper body of a fallen angel and the lower body of an Asian dragon. This creature had been nailed to a large cross and its eyes were covered with a blindfold. Blood dripped beneath the blindfold. However, the thing that caught Naruto's attention the most was the glowing black tentacle-like thing protruding from its mouth. Not only was it long, but it had extended to several dozen meters in length and was wiggling around. Issei, Valley, Lefei, and Rainier were doing their best to cut that tongue off, but it was not going well for them, especially since Rizavam had decided to join in on the action. He fought alongside the fallen angel, dragon hybrid thing, taking on both Issei and Valley at the same time. Naruto frowned when Valley tried to attack Rizavam using his sacred gear, but then the old devil dodged Valley's attack and touched the sacred gear. The divine dividing, the sacred gear that made Valley so powerful, grew dim as if Rizavam had nullified it. Ha 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 ha. You don't really think you can beat me, do you? Did you forget about my sacred gear canceller? Valley gritted his teeth as Rizavam laughed in his face. At the same time, Issei fired off a dragon shot, but Rizavam saw it come and simply raised his hand. Just like what happened with Valley's attack, this one quickly dispersed as though it had been completely nullified. While they were being pushed back by Rizavam, Lefei and Rainier were unable to even launch an attack at the strange creature they were fighting. The odd thing about that battle was the creature didn't seem to be doing anything. It wasn't really attacking them, but none of their attacks seemed capable of defeating it. Rainier's light spears struck the strange tongue tentacle and bounced off it. Lefei had summoned Fenrir, which was attacking the tentacle alongside her. All sorts of magic circles appeared around the girl, launching numerous types of magic that struck the thing to little effect. Even Fenrir's claws and fangs were not doing any damage. What the heck is going on here? Asked Naruto, still gawking. And Naruto? At the sound of the small voice, Naruto turned to find Asia and Kuno kneeling on the ground some distance away. It looked like Asia was trying to protect Kuno while also casting heal on Naruto and Valley as they fought against Rizavam. Kuno. Naruto sighed in relief. I'm glad you are okay. Naruto, Kuno looked like she was on the verge of tears. Her eyes were red and puffy. Naruto reached out and placed his hand on her head, gently rubbing it. Her fox ears twitched. It's okay, he murmured as he looked at Asia. What's going on? Can you explain what happened to me? Asia was fairly wide-eyed, but she nodded. Why yes, that thing is Samael. He swallowed Office. Eyes and the others are trying to rescue her, but...
Gotcha. I think I understand. While Asia wasn't really explaining what happened very well, likely because she was in shock, Naruto was able to piece everything together based on what he was seeing. That strange angel dragon creature was Samael. It had swallowed Ophis, meaning she was probably inside of that tongue thing, or maybe she was inside of Samael's stomach. Naruto couldn't be sure on that, but he understood enough. He needed to get Ophis out.
At that moment, Valley and Issei were driven into a corner. Issei tried to use his Sonic Boost Knight ability to blitz Rizavum, but the powerful devil avoided his attack with ease and slammed a knee into the boy's gut. Issei was launched backward. At the same time, Valley began attempting to divide his grandfather's power, but Rizavum once more used that strange canceling ability. He then created a glowing magic circle in his hand, slammed it into Valley's face, and sent the man flying backward like a rocket. Valley crashed into the wall, which dented but didn't break. That wall must have been made from sturdy stuff.
Rizavum Lucifer lives up to his reputation as a super devil like Searsex and Beelzebub, Revel murmured. Even Issei and Valley aren't able to beat him.
He certainly does, Naruto said with a nod. It looks like I'll need to step in. Go join Fei-chan and the others. See what you can do about freeing Ophis. I will, Revel said with a nod. You two are trying so hard, but it just isn't working out for you, is it? Asked Rizavum with a laugh. He then glanced at Lefei and Rainier as they futilely tried to defeat Samael. You two are also getting annoying. Why don't you get lost? Rizavum waved his hand and created a powerful magic circle that crackled. A large sphere of demonic power exploded from it and raced toward Lefei, Rainier, and Fenrir, who all sensed the attack and turned to look at it in shock. An attack of that level would kill them if they were struck, but they didn't have time to move. So Naruto finally made his move. He appeared in front of them in a burst of speed, created a Rasengan in his hand, then added wind chakra to the Rasengan. Since this attack was more powerful than anything he had blocked before, Naruto channeled even more chakra into the Rasengan to create an Udama Fugen Rasengan, which he thrust forward. The swirling white ball of chakra slammed into the sphere of demonic power. The two attacks exploded and cancelled each other out. However, the backlash was powerful enough that Naruto skidded backward. Oh ho! Rizavum raised an eyebrow. I see you somehow managed to escape from Yami. I was certain he would kill you.
Let's just say I had a friend help me out and leave it at that. Naruto shrugged before his eyes narrowed. You've been doing a number on my friends. I'm not really happy about that.
HMPH. As if I care about what makes you happy. Rizavum snorted, then smiled. I'd much rather see you writhing in anger and agony than joy. What a foul man you are. Thank you for the compliment. As Naruto traded wits with Rizavum, Issei and Valley were able to recover. They quickly moved over to stand beside Naruto. While Issei looked happy to see him, Valley was mostly focused on his grandfather. His eyes were narrowed in a look of hatred that Naruto had never seen on the young man before. It seems fighting against you really is too hard without going all out, Valley muttered with a dark glare. In that case, I can only use my strongest techniques. Then I will also show you, the one who is about to awaken, the two heavenly dragons that. Rizavum shook his head and raised his hand, creating a magic circle. You can't really believe I'd let you enter your juggernaut drive, do you? Dream on. When Rizavum created the magic circle, the restraint on Samael's right hand came off. An odd cry escaped the creature's mouth before the right hand shot toward Valley. A black block similar to the one that had enveloped Ophis charged toward him. Naruto, however, appeared in front of this and entered his Rikudo Sennin mode. He quickly sent one of his truth-seeking balls toward the black object, transforming it into a spinning sword that cut through Samael's attack. Rizavum narrowed his eyes. That attack of yours is nearly identical to Yami's. I see you two really are the same people. However, even if you have the ability to block these attacks, do you really think you can block them all? Before Naruto had a chance to respond, the strange black thing, whatever it was, appeared again, and enveloped Valley before Naruto could actually respond. Samael released a demonic howl before the black block burst apart. Valley was released, but his armor was destroyed along with the block. Blood splattered against the floor as he fell to his knees. Damn it! Valley! Issei shouted in shock. Ha ha ha! The greatest weakness of you dragons is Samael. His curse is powerful enough to even affect Ophis and Great Red. What hope do the two heavenly dragons have? Issei glared at Rizavum, but the man just chuckled as if that expression of his amused him. Naruto decided to ignore Rizavum for the moment. He spun around, grabbing two of his truth-seeking balls. and changed their shape into a pair of short swords. Using his incredible speed, he rushed toward the block containing Ophis. "Oh, no you don't." Rizavam saw what Naruto was doing and tried to fire several demonic spheres at him. But Naruto made the remaining truth-seeking balls appear in their path and intercept them. The truth-seeking balls had a unique composition that allowed them to slice through Rizavam's attacks. What's more, Issei also appeared in front of Naruto wearing his blaster bishop armor and fired several intense bursts of power at Rizavam, forcing the man to block his attacks. "TCH. You are actually beginning to annoy me now, blasted dragon." With a scowl on his face, Rizavam prepared to attack Issei again, but Revel joined forces with Lefei. Two magic circles appeared in front of them. Fire exploded from Revel's magic circle and wind from Lefei's. The two attacks combined and slammed into Rizavam before he could do anything. With a wave of his hand, the attacks dispersed. Rizavam was unharmed. However, the attack had distracted him long enough that Naruto was able to reach the black thing containing Ophis. He sliced the black object apart with a swing of his truth-seeking balls. While Samael was incredibly durable and strong against dragons, it only offered a little resistance against the truth-seeking balls. Truth-seeking balls were a combination of all 5 basic elements, and Naruto had imbued his with yin-yang release, which allowed them to neutralize ninjutsu. Because of the nature of the orbs, they didn't just neutralize ninjutsu but all types of magical abilities, including Samael's powers. Ophis was released from the power. She didn't look injured. However, her eyes were narrowed as she glanced at Samael, then at Rizavam. "You have taken a lot of my power, but what are you going to use it for?" Rizavam smiled at Ophis's question. "Isn't that obvious? I need the power of the Ouroboros dragon. However, you are far too willful and would never listen to me. That is why I took your power. I am going to pour that power into Lilith, who is only an empty vessel right now. After that, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll use her as a toy while imagining she is you?" Once more, Rizavam smiled at his own crass joke. Naruto shifted as a small burst of killing intent flared up inside of him. He suppressed it. Right now was not the time to get into a fight. In either event, while it looks like I only managed to take half of Ophis's power, that should be enough for my purposes, and I can always try and take all of it later. Unlike that idiot Cao Cao, Hades and I have come to an understanding, so I can summon Samael whenever I please. Isn't that nice? As he spoke, a magic circle appeared underneath him. Oh, before I forget, I should mention that part of my deal with Hades was that he would be allowed to take Ophis. He should be sending his Grim Reapers over to capture her. A cruel smile appeared on his face. I'm sure you'll have a hard time taking her when she still has half her powers, but I wonder if the rest of you will be able to make it out of here alive. With those words, Rizavam disappeared, devil ninja. With Ophis safe, Naruto and the others returned to the entrance hall where the two battles were happening between Rias and Euclid and Grendel and Kaneko. It looked like the battles were over now. Perhaps Euclid and Grendel had felt when Rizavam disappeared and realized he'd succeeded. Naruto didn't think Euclid was the type to run unless they were certain they had accomplished their goals, and Grendel didn't run unless Euclid forced him to. Naruto walked over to Rias with Ophis and Kuno at his side. She took one look at them and smiled. "I see you succeeded in rescuing them," she said. "Well, half succeeded." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. Half of Ophis's powers were stolen. To top it off, it seems Hades is sending his Grim Reapers over here to capture her. I'm not sure what he wants with her, but I doubt it is anything good. Rias closed her eyes and her brow furrowed. Naruto didn't interrupt his girlfriend while she was thinking. If that's the case, we should meet up with the others and leave before they get here. I was thinking the same thing, Naruto said. No one disagreed with her words, and they quickly went back outside using the way they had entered. It didn't take more than 15 minutes. However, when they arrived outside, the first thing that assaulted Naruto's senses was the sound of detonations. They slammed into his eardrums and nearly blasted him off his feet. This was followed by the intense surge of energy, which caused the hairs on his scalp to prickle. Naruto looked up in time to see Biku and Kuroka being forced back by numerous cloaked figures wielding scythes. Grim Reapers. They were sort of like half-gods that did the bidding of Hades, the undisputed ruler of the underworld. Kuroka created several copies of herself, but they were all illusions. The Grim Reapers didn't seem to realize this as they attacked her illusions, and while they were busy being tricked, she sent several attacks their way. She summoned multiple giant wheels covered in black flames and sent them at the Grim Reapers, destroying many of them.
Meanwhile, Baiko used his extendable pole to smack a lot of Grim Reapers out of the sky. Unlike Kuroke, who seemed to focus mostly on utilizing her senjutsu, he was almost all melee. He dove between enemies on his flying fucking Nimbus and swatted Grim Reapers like a rampaging school teacher punishing bad students. Even Naruto winced when one unfortunate Reaper received the end of his pole to their face.
While Biku and Kuroka looked like they could handle the situation, the members of Sona's peerage were not so lucky. Naruto only saw a glimpse of Saji darting between the buildings. The man was being hounded by what looked like a dozen Grim Reapers. He was certain Saji could take care of himself in most situations, but the man had been lugging two unconscious bodies over his shoulders. It looked like the two he was carrying had blood matting their hair. Several hundred meters in the distance, a giant ice serpent was attacking and being attacked by many Grim Reapers. Even as he watched, the Grim Reapers descended upon the serpent, hacking it apart with their scythes until it shattered into 1,000 pieces. "We need to split up and rescue the others," Ria said the moment she also took stock of the situation out here. "Valley, I think you, Lefei, and Arthur should help Kuroka and Biku. Eyes, take Akeno, Rainier, Asia, and Xenovia, and help rescue Saji and the other members of Sona's peerage. Naruto, you, me, Revel, Kiba, Irina, and Kaneko will help Sona. We'll rescue everyone and meet up at the extraction point." HMPH. Rainier crossed her arms. "I guess I can help out. I don't really like being told what to do, but I do agree that your strategy is the best one." Valley gestured to Arthur and Lefei. "Come on, you two. Let's go help Biku and Kuroka." While Arthur followed Valley without a backward glance, Lefei glanced at Naruto one last time before she turned around and flew after her brother and Valley. Fenrir faithfully followed by the girl's side. "Ufufu, I guess I'll be teaming up with you guys," Akeno said as she walked over to Issei, Asia, Rainier, and Xenovia. "Ufufu, it should be fun. I don't know how much longer I'll last, but I'll keep fighting until I have nothing left," Xenovia said with a determined gleam in her eye. Aiz-kun, I'll do my best to help you out," Asia said while clenching her fists. "In that case we'll head out too," Issei said, still decked out in his Welsh dragon armor. He looked at Rias and Naruto, then nodded. "We'll see you at the extraction point, Bucko, sensei." "Stay safe," Naruto said. "You too." With his group behind him, Issei charged off in the direction where Saji had last been seen. As they disappeared, a group of Grim Reapers appeared from above and descended toward the spot where they had vanished to. Explosions echoed from that direction seconds later. A loud boom that caused the ground to shake echoed all around them. A massive beam of red energy erupted through the sky and took out several Grim Reapers. Naruto recognized the telltale signs of Issei's dragon shot. "We should also head out," Kiba said. "Worried about Tsubaki?" asked Naruto. "A little." When Kiba admitted this, Naruto could not help but chuckle. "I'll do my best to help you all out." Irina created a sword of light from her powers. "Michael-sama gave me these powers so I can help protect my friends, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll do my best to come up with strategies we can use," Revel said, biting her lip. "However, without knowing the capability of these Grim Reapers, I'm not sure how good my strategies will be." "It'll be okay, fried rice." Kaneko patted the girl on the shoulder. "So I'm not even fried chicken now?" While Kaneko's small joke had lightened the mood a little bit, it didn't change that they were still in a pretty grim situation. Naruto looked at Office and Kuno, still glued to his side. Kuno was shaking in fright, which he didn't blame her for. She'd definitely gotten far more than she had bargained for when she came to Kuo. Naruto honestly felt awful for her. "Office, do you think you can help us out?" he asked. "I do not believe so." Office frowned at him. "While I still retain half my powers, the loss of my powers has made them unstable. Once I adjust to the loss, I think I will be able to use them again, but they won't be as effective as before." "In that case, I guess we can only rely on ourselves," Naruto said with a sigh. Devil Ninja, Naruto moved swiftly with Rias, Revel, Kiba, Irina, and Kaneko through the streets of Lucifad. What had once been a nice but empty city was now a war zone. Explosions detonated in the air as Grim Reapers attacked Sona's peerage, who had been forced to scatter across the city. In the skies above, Naruto could see Valley and his group doing their best to fight off the overwhelming number of Grim Reapers. He didn't know how many there were, but it felt like Hades had sent his entire army after them. Ophis was sticking close to Naruto. Her powers were currently in flux. While she had plenty of power, she had no control, and thus she could not protect herself. Kuno also stuck by Naruto's side, though hers was on account of how she didn't have much power to begin with. She might be a yokai, but she was still just a young girl. "We've got several cloaks coming up on our 6, Kaneko said. She was acting as their censor since she had such great control over Senjutsu and Naruto was still not using it. "Leave this to me," Naruto announced. He quickly parted from the group, disappearing within a shunshin and traveling to the roof. He could already see the Grim Reapers that Kaneko was talking about. There were a dozen of them. Hup! Kicking off the roof, Naruto traveled through the sky. He made a hand seal. 2 shadow clones appeared by his side, though one of them used Naruto's shoulders leap higher into the air before flapping his bat like devil wings. Naruto and his remaining clone attacked the Grim Reapers. He slammed a Rasengan into one, watching as it went spinning through the air. Meanwhile, his clone launched his infamous Uzumaki Renden onto another one. While that Grim Reaper also plummeted to the ground, one of them came in and swung its scythe, slicing straight through the clone. As the clone disappeared in a puff of smoke, the other Grim Reapers all attacked Naruto at the same time. Only for Naruto to also disappear in a puff of smoke. Before they could search out the original Naruto, several threads of glistening ninja wire suddenly flashed in the light as Naruto, now high above their heads after replacing himself with the clone who used his shoulders as a springboard, jerked his hand tight. The Grim Reapers were unable to escape as the ninja wire wrapped around them. Now trapped, they could do nothing as Naruto created 2 more clones, which created a massive Rasen Shuriken between them as they dropped from the sky. Flapping his wings in the air, Naruto watched as a large sphere of intense wind chakra exploded. He couldn't see the millions of microscopic cuts that were appearing along the Grim Reapers' bodies. However, he could see how their bodies were swiftly torn to shreds under the incredible pressure of his infamous wind jutsu. He waited until they were nothing but chunks of cloth and bone before traveling back down toward Rias and the others. "All done," Naruto said in a cheerful voice. "You scare me sometimes," Rias said with a small headshake. "With my brilliance? With that ridiculous power of yours?" Naruto laughed as they continued on. They ran into 3 more groups of Grim Reapers, but Kaneko and Revel took care of one group by using teamwork and Rias annihilated the last with her powers of destruction. "We didn't really get to do anything, did we?" Kiba joked as they kept moving. Irina shook her head. "No, we didn't. I wanted to show off my angel abilities a little." "There will be plenty of time for that," Naruto said. "We're almost at where Sona and Tsubaki are." Naruto's words were indeed correct. Barely 10 seconds later, their group burst out between a set of buildings and found what looked like the site of an ancient battlefield. Corpses littered the ground. Of course, the corpses were little more than skeletal remains, but that just added an ancient feeling to this battlefield. It was like staring at a battle from the Edo period. Several meters ahead of them were Sona and Tsubaki, locked in a battle against what looked like 100 Grim Reapers. Naruto honestly could not even guess at their numbers. There were so many they blotted out the sky. It was amazing that the 2 of them hadn't been overwhelmed, but it looked like Sona was relying heavily on her ice magic, while Tsubaki was twirling a naginata in her hands and sliced apart any Grim Reaper that came too close. The dome above their heads kept the Grim Reapers from attacking en masse, which forced them to take on Tsubaki in close quarters. However, while the Grim Reapers were being kept at bay, Naruto knew it was only a matter of time before the 2 were overwhelmed. As a general rule of thumb, low-class Grim Reapers were stronger than the average middle-class devil. It was likely that these 2 were alive only because Sona was a high-class devil and Tsubaki had the strength of a middle-class devil. "We're going in," Rias shouted. Kiba and Irina, head straight through the center with Naruto. Kaneko and Revel, take the left flank. I'll take the right. "Got it," Kiba said. "Just leave this to us," Irina added. Naruto pounded his fists together. Time to kick more ass. "Let's go, fried turkey." "I'm not a turkey. Why do you keep changing my nickname like this?" "Because it's fun." While Ophis and Kuno found a place to hide, Naruto separated from Rias, Kaneko, and Revel as he lead Kiba and Irina on a blitz run straight through the Grim Reapers' formation. His first attack, a Rasengan, slammed into the face of one Grim Reaper, blasting its skull to bits. Afterward, he created several shadow clones and had them quickly widen the gap they were running through. His clones were savage as they fired off Rasengans like they were going out of style, killed with kunai. One of his clones had even taken a Grim Reaper's arm and was beating his foes with it. Irina and Kiba were right behind him. Kiba, being a knight, put that incredible speed of his to good use.
None of the Grim Reapers could even see him. He was like a flash of light as he created multiple swords that exploded from the ground and skewered several of his opponents. At the same time, Kiba himself appeared and disappeared in bursts of intense speed and attacked while his enemies were distracted. Even Naruto was impressed when the boy jumped through the air and twirled around, hacking off a Grim Reaper's head with his demonic holy sword.
While Kiba used his speed, Irina elegantly flowed across the battlefield as she hacked apart Grim Reapers. Her body spun, the light sword in her hand humming, as she danced and swung the blade. An arm was removed by her upward swing. A head was chopped off when she swung her blade horizontally. Two Grim Reapers tried attacking her, but she stepped backward to avoid one strike, then raised her sword and blocked the other one. Loud sizzling sounds emerged from their weapons as light battled against the scythe. Then Irina moved to the side and rotated her wrist. The scythe became buried in the ground as she took a step forward and sliced through the Grim Reaper's torso. Sona and Tsubaki saw the group heading their way and fought even more viciously. Despite how hard they were working, it was clear they could not do much. Most of the Grim Reapers had already backed off in the face of Sona's last attack, but there was one Grim Reaper with much darker robes who refused to stay back. "All of you will die," the Grim Reaper in dark robes hissed. "That's not for you to decide," Sona said in a composed voice. HMPH. The Grim Reaper shot forward and swung its scythe at them, but Tsubaki intercepted the attack with her Naginata while Sona used her ice magic to create another massive serpent. The giant snake wove around Tsubaki and attacked the Grim Reaper, but he merely swerved back, spun around, and used his scythe to hack off the beast's head. "You should already know that doesn't work on me," the Grim Reaper said. "Then how about this? Konohagakure Hiden Taijutsu Ogi. Senin Garashi. Rasengan style." Before the Grim Reaper could launch his attack again, Naruto appeared beneath him and slammed two Rasengans up the cloaked figure's ass. The attacks were so strong that when they exploded, the Grim Reaper was launched into the sky, smacked against several of his fellow Grim Reapers, and caused the Grim Reapers in question to explode. "What kind of secret technique is that?" asked Sona. While she at least looked calm on the outside, Tsubaki had curled her nose in disgust at him, but it wasn't like Naruto cared about what this woman thought, even if she did love Kiba. "Just an attack designed to piss opponents off." Naruto waved a hand. "You two should go, head outside this formation of enemies with Irina and Kiba." "And what about you?" asked Sona. "I'm going to deal with these people." "You say that like it's easy." Naruto laughed off Sona's words and once more told them to leave. None of them argued as they swiftly began traveling out the way they'd come, through the weakened area they had blasted through. Of course, by this point, that area had already been filled, but the enemy's numbers had also thinned. He could see the other three past the formation. Rias was on one side, using a combination of sword techniques and long-range bombardment spells to annihilate several Grim Reapers. On the other side was Revel and Kaneko. It looked like Kaneko was up front, using Senjutsu to fight evenly with the more powerful Grim Reapers, while Revel hung in the back and provided support. Kiba was the first to emerge from the enemy formation, but Irina, Sona, and Tsubaki followed shortly behind. When Naruto saw they were safe, he created 6 shadow clones and had them split up into groups of 2. One of them held out their hand and formed a Rasengan, while the others added wind chakra. A loud and shrill bell-like screech began echoing around the battlefield as the Naruto clones finished creating their Rasenshurikens, 3 in all. Because they couldn't throw them, the 3 clones merely leapt into the horde of Grim Reapers and thrust out their hands. Meanwhile, Naruto ran like a devil out of hell seconds before all 3 Rasenshurikens exploded. The Rasen Shuriken was still one of his greatest and most powerful techniques. Creating 3 of them and launching them into a horde of enemies was basically overkill. When the massive explosion of wind chakra lit up the sky, Sona and Tsubaki, who
who still weren't as well versed with some of his more destructive techniques, could do nothing more than gawk. 3 large spheres several dozen meters in diameter had appeared in the sky. Within those spheres were the Grim Reapers, trapped by the vortices of wind surrounding them. Meanwhile, countless microscopic blades attacked the Grim Reapers on a cellular level, utterly destroying them.
There. Naruto clapped his hands as if ridding them of dust. He walked over to the group and beamed at them as if nothing was wrong. Let's head to the extraction point. Office and Kuno quickly emerged from a building and ran to his side. As Naruto began moving off with the 2 girls in tow, Sona leaned over to Rias. Hey, Rias. Yes? Your pawn scares me sometimes? Rias just smiled. Their group arrived at the extraction point soon enough. Of course, while it was called an extraction point, it was nothing so extravagant. It was an empty space just a few kilometers outside of Lucifod. In the center of this space was a large-scale magic circle, which was a transportation circle that would take them back home. Rias and her group were the first to arrive, so they stood around and waited for the others to show up. Not long after they arrived, Valley, along with Arthur, Lefei, Kuroka, and Biku also made it. However, Issei and his group had not yet made it. Do you think Issei might have found trouble? Asked Kiba with a worried frown. Rias bit her lip. I hope not. It didn't look like there were any high-ranked Grim Reapers among the group that Hades sent. I don't believe he expected us to be capable of putting up such a strong resistance. No, maybe even someone as arrogant as Hades is unwilling to provoke the 4 Mao by sending anything above middle-ranked Grim Reapers to deal with us. In either event, so long as they don't run into a high-ranked Grim Reaper, they should be fine. How are Grim Reapers ranked? Asked Irina, now curious. It was Revel who answered them. Grim Reapers are given the same ranking system as devils. There's low, middle, high, and ultimate. You can tell what a Grim Reaper's rank is by how dark their robes are. That one who was fighting Sona and Tsubaki was a middle-ranked Grim Reaper. She paused, then continued. You should also keep in mind that Grim Reapers are generally stronger than most devils. A low-ranked Grim Reaper will be stronger than the average middle-ranked devil. The reason we were able to fight so many was due primarily to the fact that all of us have powers far beyond a simple low-rank or even middle-ranked devil. Everyone nodded at the girl's thorough explanation. However, as Revel's small lecture ended, the group once more turned in the direction of Lucifod. Eyes and the others still haven't shown up. Rias bit her lip. I think they might have run into trouble, Kaneko said, her ears twitching. This might not help, but the last time I saw them, they had been making their way here, Kuroka said. I only managed to catch a glimpse of them, though. They were too far away for me to see and they kept disappearing between the buildings, I don't believe Hyodo is so weak that he can't deal with a couple of Grim Reapers. Valley crossed his arms. I'm sure they're okay. Despite the man's words, 5 minutes soon turned into 15, and Issei's group still hadn't shown up. At this point, the looks on everyone's faces had turned grim with worry. Naruto glanced at Rias, who looked like she was about to start pacing back and forth any minute now. Naruto sighed and walked forward, causing everyone to look at him. He gave them a helpless smile and shrugged. I'm going to see what's keeping them, he said. Rias frowned but nodded. Be careful. I will. He was about to leave when someone grabbed the sleeve of his jumpsuit. He turned to find Ophis staring at him. With a grin, he patted her on the head before removing her fingers from his sleeve. Don't worry, I won't be gone long. Naruto raced back into Lucifod and found the tallest building he could. There were still a lot of Grim Reapers in the area. They obviously hadn't given up on finding Ophis, though it looked like they had no means of tracking her. Naruto narrowed his eyes and searched for Issei and the others. He found them, but his eyes narrowed further when he saw how injured they were. Issei was standing protectively in front of the group, blood running down his head as he pushed his boosted gear to the limit. It appeared he was using his balance breaker to the limit. Not only that, but Akeno had even exposed her breasts for him to power up, which meant the situation must have been dire because she'd probably never do that if she didn't have to. Asia was doing her best to heal the members of Sona's peerage, all of whom were bloody and bruised. Not only was Issei viciously fighting to protect the others, Akeno and Rainier had even joined forces, an occurrence he didn't think was possible. While Rainier used a light spear to fend the Grim Reapers off, Akeno was blasting at them with holy lightning. It looked like they were doing a somewhat decent job of forcing their enemies back. However, Naruto could see how their bodies were slumping. They were beginning to burn out. Naruto did not hesitate. He blasted off the building and activated Rikudo Sennin mode to give himself a burst of power and speed. It didn't take more than a few seconds to arrive at their location, and when he did, Naruto didn't stop as he created a pair of staffs with his truth-seeking balls and tore into the enemy forces. He became a whirlwind of destruction. Not only did he attack with the short staffs in his hands, but he sent his truth-seeking balls sailing into the Grim Reapers. They might not have looked like much, but these small black orbs possessed a frighteningly destructive power. There were quite a few middle-ranked Grim Reapers, but in the face of Naruto while he was in Rikudo Sennin mode, they were basically just paper. Naruto! Asia exclaimed with joy. Sensei! Issei shouted with tears in his eyes. Ufufu, it looks like Kitsune-kun has come to our rescue, Akeno said. HMPH. As if I needed this asshat to rescue me, Rainier mumbled. Naruto looked at everyone, at his fellow peerage members and Sona's peerage. All of them were injured to some extent. However, they were able to heal thanks to Asia and her twilight healing. Come on, everyone, he said. We need to leave now. You head to the extraction point. I'll cover for you. Everyone nodded before they set off. Because several of their members were unconscious despite being healed, some of them had to be carried. Saji, who was healed but exhausted, lifted Momo and Rhea over his shoulders as they ran through the streets. Issei led the group. They were essentially using him as a spear point since his balance breaker was the most powerful among them. Meanwhile, Naruto darted around the group and killed any Grim Reaper that came too close. It looked like they were making great progress. Naruto should have known things were going too smoothly. They were just about to reach the outskirts of Lucifod when a magic circle appeared and Shalba Beelzebub stepped out. He was alone, which was odd. However, even more odd was the arrow in his hand. Naruto didn't know what he was going to use it for. An arrow wouldn't even really harm any of them. Sekiryute, Shalba screamed. I've decided to end you. Your master has ruined my plans over and over again. If I can't kill that bitch, then I will get my revenge by killing you. Issei clicked his tongue as he stared at the man. I don't know what you're screaming about, but anyone picking a fight with the bucko is going to get their ass creamed. Prepare yourself. Akeno snorted into her hand while Rainier palmed her face. Naruto was about to intervene in the battle. He had a bad feeling about it, but before he could, a Grim Reaper suddenly appeared before him. This Grim Reaper was different from the rest in that he had his hood pulled down, though that didn't mean Naruto could see his face, which was covered by a clown mask. His scythe had a more intense aura than any of the ones wielded by the Grim Reapers they had fought so far. It was so black that it was like the light abstained from it. What's more, this Grim Reaper's robes were also the darkest black Naruto had ever seen. He felt like he was staring into a black hole. I'm going to go ahead and say you are one of those high-ranked Grim Reapers, Naruto said as he stood on the roof of a building next to Issei and the others. The Grim Reaper bowed slightly. That is correct. My name is Pluto. I am an ultimate class Grim Reaper under the employ of Lord Hades. I assume you're here because you don't want me interfering in the battle between Shalba and Aiz. Naruto gave Pluto a vicious grin as he cracked his fingers. Who the hell do you think you are? You're asking for an ass kicking. HMPH. I know well of your power, the Grim Reaper called Pluto said as he swung his scythe. I also know you are not at your full strength. A man who doesn't even have half of his original power is no threat to me. We'll see about that. Naruto snorted as he prepared himself for combat, but he was secretly worried. An ultimate class Grim Reaper was considered by many to be even more powerful than ultimate class devils like Seraphal Leviathan. Only a super devil like Searzex could defeat someone like this, and while Naruto was confident in his own power, what Pluto said was true. He wasn't at full strength. Kurama. You have 5 minutes. After Kurama informed him of how much time Naruto could remain in their shared state, the fox's chakra spread through his body as he activated his 9-tailed chakra shroud on top of Naruto's Rikudo Sennin mode. Pluto did not say anything as Naruto powered up. Down below, Issei's battle against Shalba continued, while the Grim Reapers tried their best to take down the others. Zenobia, Akeno, and Rainier were having none of that and fought viciously to hold them back with the still conscious members of Sona's peerage. It also looked like Shalba did not have the strength to defeat Issei.
Out of the corner of his eyes, Naruto saw Issei slam a fist into Shalba's body that sent the devil crashing through a wall and demolishing the entire building.
Truly, you are an incredibly powerful individual, Pluto said at last. Even though you lack half of your original power, you are able to emit so much energy that even I am forced to acknowledge you as a threat. I can see why Lord Hades wants to get rid of you. This kind of power is dangerous. If Hades wants to get rid of me, he should have come himself. Naruto grinned, revealing his sharp canines. You aren't anywhere close to being strong enough to beat me. I'm the greatest fucking ninja in the entire world, Dat Bayo. There was a pause in the battle. Dat what? Dat Bayo. You know, like, believe it, or something.
Pluto stared at Naruto, who stared back. There was a moment of uneasy silence before Pluto attacked. He rushed forward and slashed at Naruto with his scythe, but of course, the Naruto his scythe bit into exploded into smoke, revealing that Naruto had replaced himself with a shadow clone. Before Pluto could retreat, Naruto appeared behind him and tried to slam a Fuden Rasengan into his back. It was blocked when the Grim Reaper moved his scythe to intercept. Even though the attack was blocked, the destructive power of his jutsu sent Pluto flying through the air. He managed to stabilize himself. However, Naruto was already on top of the Grim Reaper thing. What were Grim Reapers anyway? All they had were bones.
Pushing those thoughts into the back of his mind, Naruto continued his relentless bombardment of attacks, which rang out as Pluto intercepted them with his scythe. Explosions and shockwaves surged from their constant back and forth. Several buildings in the general vicinity were destroyed and even some of the Grim Reapers attacking Naruto's friends disintegrated when they got too close.
When Sona's peerage and the other Grimoire group members saw this they immediately backed away. Naruto noticed this and knew he could now go all out. 10 arms extended from his back. Each one held a mini Rasenshuriken. He slammed them into Pluto, who was finally overwhelmed by the constant attacks and forced back. Even so, he didn't get blown apart, which had been Naruto's original plan. He frowned. This Grim Reaper was not stronger than him, but he seemed to have a lot of experience. As their battle continued, the world around them began shaking. Tears in space appeared around their battle. Black rips began appearing all over the place, large spatial tears that caused the area around them to distort. He watched as one of the rips sucked up an entire building. It wasn't just the building that disappeared either. Several Grim Reapers that had been floating near it were also sucked up.
You are indeed a powerful enemy, Pluto admitted at last. He looked at the tears in space that had opened all around them. Even this dimension is unable to withstand your power, though this dimension was already collapsing when Rizavam and Euclid left. I understand now there is no way for me to defeat you, but it doesn't matter. Our goal has already been accomplished.
What? Naruto asked. In that moment, he received his answer when a loud cry of, eyes, went up. Naruto turned his head toward the battle between Shalba and Issei. Shalba was engulfed in a bright red light as Issei fired off several cannons from his wings. However, what caused Naruto's heart to shake was not watching as Issei killed Shalba. It was how Issei was standing in front of Akano as though he had protected her from something, an arrow protruding from his chest. He turned his head toward the stunned fallen angel, devil hybrid and smiled as he said something. Blood was dripping from his mouth. Naruto didn't know what he said, but Akino's horrified expression grew. Seconds later, Issei fell forward and was drawn into a spatial rift, where he disappeared. Eyes. All of the girls who had been fighting alongside Issei screamed when they saw him disappear into a spatial crack. They would have rushed through, but Naruto was aware of how dangerous these rifts were. He slammed a Rasengan into Pluto's face, taking advantage of the situation, and then rushed toward the girls. He created 4 shadow clones, one for each girl. Before any of them could race into the spatial crack, the Naruto clones knocked them unconscious, grabbed them, and bolted as more cracks began appearing. Naruto glanced around as more and more tears materialized in thin air. He frowned as he wondered what the hell was going on. It seems Rizavam does not want us attaining Ophis, Pluto said as he floated down beside Naruto. He has set this alternate dimension to collapse. I believe it was his intent to kill off all his enemies in a single swoop. Our battle here is done. Naruto didn't bother paying attention to Pluto as the Grim Reaper flew off. It was clear the being sent by Hades had no intention of battling him when there was nothing to be gained by it, and he had lost his desire to battle.
He bit his lip and stared at the crumbling space all around him. What should he do? As Naruto was lost in thoughts and trying to come to a decision, the most unlikely person suddenly appeared before him. He gazed at Ophis as his eyes suddenly watered. "Ophis, I saw what happened," Ophis said. "I know you wanted to go alone, but I followed you when no one else was looking." She glanced at the crack that Issei had fallen through. That boy, he was struck by an arrow coated in Samael's blood. Samael's curse has infected him. It is very likely that his body is dying. Once that happens, his spirit will die next. A shudder ran through Naruto's body when he heard this. Fear took hold of him. Issei was one of his friends, probably one of his best friends now. He recalled the times he helped the boy train, the times he, Issei, and Kiba went out to do guy things, and all of the battles they had been through together. Issei was more of a brother to him now than Sasuke had ever been. The idea of him being gone was not something Naruto could accept. "Is there anything I can do to bring him back?" he asked. "There is nothing you can do," Ophis said, and Naruto felt a crushing weight on his chest, until she spoke again. "But I might be able to do something." "You can?" Naruto asked. Ophis nodded her head and Naruto sucked in the tears he wanted to shed. "Please do it. Find eyes. Then come back to me." Ophis's eyes sparkled a little when Naruto told her to come back to him. She nodded once before turning around and blitzing through the spatial crack that Issei had disappeared through. Devil Ninja, Rias and her peerage, Sona and her peerage, and the members of Team Valley disappeared through a summoning circle and reappeared inside of their house. Naruto and his clones were with them. They were carrying the unconscious Akano, Asia, Rainier, and Xenovia. Naruto told Rias about what happened. Immediately after returning home, Rias contacted Azazel and informed him of what happened. It did not take long for Azazel to appear before them. Then he, along with the former Dragon King, Tannen, prepared a ritual to summon Issei. The Dragon Gate is a magic circle exclusive to dragons. Azazel explained to the Gremory group. It allows them to summon another dragon to them. While the Dragon Gate insignia can be drawn by someone else, it only responds when there is a dragon nearby. This is why I've invited Tannen. Everyone glanced at Tannen, who was in a much smaller form than usual. Not only was Tannen present, but even Valley had remained behind to help open the Dragon Gate. They were currently inside of the living room of what had basically become the Gremory peerage's house, though Naruto would tell anyone willing to listen that it was his house because his apartment complex used to be here. The living room had been completely cleared out to make way for the magic circle, which spanned the entire room. The Dragon Gate insignia had the representation of the 5 Dragon Kings, Tannen, the 2 heavenly dragons, and Grendel. Each dragon was represented on the magic circle by a different color. Red for Diedrich, white for Albion, purple for Tannen, blue for Tiamat, green for Yu Long, black for Vritra, gray for Midgard-Sormer, gold for Fafnir, and dark green for Grendel. Kuroka was helping draw the circle as well. It seemed she knew quite a bit about magic circles and even the Dragon Gate. "The situation is beginning to look incredibly grim," Naruto muttered as he rubbed Kuno's head. There was something therapeutic about it, and he really needed this to keep himself from going crazy. His actions also seemed to help calm down Kuno. Rias nodded, her eyes filled with worry as she watched Azazel and Kuroka. Now that Rizavam has Ophis's powers, there is no telling what he will do. I've already received a report from Graphia saying the old Satan faction has begun attacking towns and villages in the underworld with gigantic monsters. Not only that, but it seems Hades has been helping the old Satan faction from behind the scenes. I've heard that Hades is the one responsible for many of the monsters that have appeared in the underworld, Revel said in a quiet voice. She hadn't been the same since her brother attacked her. I wonder what sort of monsters that God has given to aid the old Satan faction, Naruto muttered. Rias shook her head. I don't know, but I've heard rumors that some of them are incredibly powerful beasts like Cerberus, Orthos, and even the Hydra. There's even a rumor going around that the evil dragons have been revived somehow, though I don't know if that one is true. That didn't sound good, but Naruto didn't say anything as Azazel and Kuroka continued to work. Revel shifted a little and moved closer to him as the silence grew. She didn't say anything, but Naruto placed a hand on her head like he was doing with Kuno. As the girl relaxed under his touch, Rias sighed while Roswise looked just a little put out. Sorry, he grinned. I only have 2 hands. I didn't say anything, Roswise blushed. No, but you were thinking it would be nice if I pet you too, right? Absolutely not. I want you to pet me, Kaneko muttered with a frown.
Later, Naruto assured her. Okay, the circle is complete. Azazel stood up and stepped back for a moment, wiping his brow. He looked at the group. We will now be performing the ritual.
Will Ophis also appear as well? Asked Naruto. Ophis? Naruto nodded. She went after eyes when he disappeared through that spatial crack. Azazel rubbed his chin and looked at the magic circle thoughtfully. If she is with eyes, then she should appear as well. Naruto accepted those words as Azazel lifted the jewel with Fafnir and channeled his power through it, causing the jewel to glow a golden color. At that moment, the magic circle also began glowing. Soon, it wasn't just the circle and the jewel. Valley's body began emitting a bright white glow, while Tannen's body glowed with a vibrant purple. Soon after, light spread through the entire floor. It was so bright that Naruto, Rias, and the others were forced to cover their eyes with their hands.
The light did eventually die down, and when it did, everyone looked at the magic circle, expecting to find Issei and Ophis standing before them.
Neither of them were present. All that appeared in the circle were 8 pawn pieces. I am not too fond of my writing at the moment. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed, but there are a lot of inconsistencies within my story. Part of me feels like I've been stretching myself too thin. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I've been consistently writing around 8,000 to 12,000 words every single day for multiple stories for the past several months, and I think I've been getting them all mixed up in my head. Devil Ninja has also suffered as a result. I'm going to try and focus on only 1 or 2 stories from now on, though this does mean my writing for other stories will slow down. If you've read the High School DxD light novels, then you will know that this chapter is basically the ending of Volume 11. Ouroboros and the promotion test has practically the same ending as this chapter, where Issei is killed by Shalba Beelzebub with an arrow drenched in Samael's blood. Of course, the rest of this arc is very different from the original. That is because I have been trying my best to mix original story ideas with canonical story ideas. I do not know if I've done a good job, but I hope you all enjoyed this chapter. It's quite a bit longer than usual at 18,000 words. Consider the longer than average chapter my apology for not writing faster. Anyway, if anyone wants to know what I've been working outside of this FanFiction, you can follow me on Twitter. I mostly tweet about my writing, retweet artwork from my favorite artists, and anime titties. Also, I released a new book last month. It's titled Journey of a Betrayed Hero Volume 1. It's my attempt at writing an isekai light novel. It's sort of like the rising of the shield hero crossed with aesthetica of a rogue hero. The book is available digitally in Kindle Unlimited and paperback at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and basically any online retailer.